Our girl is just driving along, minding her own business on her way to wherever. In her previous life, she was a high-powered professional with a fancy car and a bright future ahead of her. Everything changes when she gets stuck behind a massive construction truck carrying a load of heavy metal pipes that look ready to spill. The pipes suddenly slide right off the truck bed and come hurtling directly toward her windshield. She doesn't even have time to scream before one of the rods slams through the glass and impales her right through the chest. She takes a second to catch her breath, thanking the heavens that it was all just a dream. But wait, she starts looking around and realizes this definitely isn't her bedroom or her apartment. Her head starts throbbing with a massive headache, as if her brain is being rewired in real time. All of a sudden, random memories start flooding back, showing her glimpses of a life she never lived. She collapses back onto the bed, wondering if she actually died and got reincarnated into another world. It hits her that she is now the villainous stepmother from some love-hate drama novel she once read. If she remembers the plot correctly, this character dies a total miserable death after failing to seduce the lead. She realizes she is in serious trouble if she follows the original script. Her train of thought is interrupted when her phone starts buzzing like crazy on the nightstand. She picks up, and some teacher named Mizuta starts yelling that her son Harudo got into a fight at kindergarten. The teacher demands she get her butt down there immediately to handle the situation. Takaco hangs up the phone looking totally annoyed that her new life is already starting with a headache. She figures since she is stuck in this body, she might as well go see what this kid is all about. She walks over to the closet to find something to wear, expecting a high-end wardrobe. Our girl is absolutely horrified when she sees the actual clothes because they are the tackiest things ever. Even though the original owner went to design school, she clearly had zero sense of style. She starts digging through the hangers, desperate to find one outfit that doesn't look like a complete disaster. After finally getting dressed, she makes her way over to the kindergarten building to face the music. She follows the signs down the hallway until she finds the door to the nurse's office. She steps inside and sees a small boy sitting all by himself on the exam table looking totally dejected. The little guy, Harudo, looks up with a bandage on his head and asks why she even bothered to come. Man, you can tell this kid expects his mom to be cold and uncaring like usual. Takaco stands there thinking how crazy it is that she went from 30 years single to suddenly having a son. She is totally winging this whole motherhood thing without a manual. She realizes she is totally winging this whole motherhood thing after going from 30 years single to suddenly having a son. She remembers a detail from her new memories and asks if he took the medicine she left on the shelf. When he admits that he did, she realizes this kid is actually super thoughtful and kind, despite his rough exterior. Just then, the teacher Mizuta storms in complaining about how much trouble Harudo has caused her today. Takaco gives her a look that says she is definitely not in the mood for any of this drama. She ignores the teacher and gently checks Harudo's head wound to see if he is actually okay. She asks him if he has any other injuries, sounding genuinely concerned for the first time ever. Then she gently asks him why he even got into a fight with the other kid in the first place. The poor kid looks like he is about to cry as he tries to explain what really happened. He yells out that he didn't steal anything and that the other kids were the ones lying about him. Takaco looks him right in the eyes and tells him he isn't just some kid. He is her precious treasure. The teacher gets all offended and starts shouting about being ignored while she is trying to talk. Takaco snaps back and demands to know why the teacher failed to mention her son was actually injured on the phone. Sick of the unfair treatment, she stands her ground and demands to know why the teacher is hiding the other kids' parents. She points out that when the kids fought before, Harudo was blamed even though the other kid wasn't even hurt. Takaco isn't having it and pulls out her phone to call the principal so they can settle this once and for all. The teacher panics and tries to grab the phone, begging her to keep the principal out of it so they can talk privately. Cut to the principal's office, where the boss is promising Takaco a full and satisfactory answer to this mess. The teacher is standing there sweating bullets, while the principal gives her the coldest glare imaginable. The principal promises to take full responsibility for the incident and handle the apology himself to make things right with Takaco. He also promises that he is going to take disciplinary action against teacher Mizuta for her unprofessional behavior. Takaco accepts the resolution, but demands that the school issues the formal apology as soon as possible. Takaco admits she was a terrible mother in the past and promises Harudo that he never has to apologize for things he didn't do ever again. She offers to treat Harudo to any dinner he wants as a celebration for the start of her new and better life. Their peaceful moment is shattered when a luxury black car speeds toward them and nearly pins them to the curb. The vehicle screeches to a stop just inches away from them, narrowly avoiding a tragic accident. Takaco immediately loses her temper and begins screaming at the driver for being so reckless in a kindergarten zone. Kiria Asahi sits in the back of the car with a look of pure indifference as he tells his assistant to hurry up and deal with the woman. Takaco is ready to keep fighting until she looks closer and realizes the man in the car is none other than the powerful CEO, Kiria Asahi. Takaco freezes when she sees him, realizing this guy is the main lead from the novel, and he is definitely not supposed to meet her yet. She realizes that according to the novel's plot, she isn't even supposed to meet the male lead yet, and worries that this encounter might break the story. She quickly tells him she must have mistaken him for someone else, while he gives her a look that says he doesn't believe her for a second. To keep the timeline intact, she immediately smothers poor Harudo against her leg so the president can't get a good look at the boy's face. She plays it cool with a fake smile, claiming she just has one of those common faces that everyone thinks they recognize. He loses interest pretty fast, though, and tells his assistant Harumoto to just hurry up and handle the situation. Kiria loses interest immediately and barks at his assistant to just hurry up and handle the situation. Harumoto hops out of the car and starts bowing, offering a sincere apology for the near accident. He hands her a business card and asks for her contact info, promising the company will cover every single hospital fee. Takaco tells him she isn't even hurt, but she makes sure to mention that his boss has a total trash attitude. Our girl is absolutely done with this guy's attitude and storms off while calling him the most arrogant man she has ever met. She doesn't even look back as his fancy car pulls away, leaving her fuming on the sidewalk with her little boy in tow. Kiria watches the woman walk away from his car, clearly suspicious of their strange encounter. Harumoto gets back behind the wheel and starts driving, looking nervous after dealing with the angry woman and her sharp tongue. He cautiously asks his boss if he has really never met that lady before, because things felt a little strange back there. Kiria shuts him down instantly, telling him that if he has enough free time to gossip, he can give him a mountain of extra work instead. That is all it takes for Harumoto to decide that keeping his mouth shut is the safest career move he can ever make. Meanwhile, Harudo is finally able to breathe again, after being nearly crushed by his mother's sudden protective hug. Little Harudo is not having it today and calls Takaco mean for hiding his face and blocking his view of the fancy man. He insists he is a big boy now and promises that he will be the one to protect her from now on. She tells him that even though he wants to be brave, a mother is always going to be the one who protects her child. She drops a bombshell on him, telling him he needs to stop calling her by her name and start calling her mama instead. Harudo gets all flustered and pouts at the request, but he eventually gives in and whispers that he understands the new rule. Feeling much better, she takes his hand and suggests they go find something delicious to eat to celebrate their narrow escape. Later that evening, she pulls out her phone and is absolutely horrified by the ancient piece of junk in her hand. She realizes the original Takaco was living in the Dark Ages, which explains why she doesn't use the internet or own modern tech. Everything in this house feels foreign to her as she tries to piece together the life of the woman she replaced. When she finds a small box and tries to open it, Harudo suddenly appears and watches her with a worried expression. Harudo suddenly appears and asks her what she is doing, watching her with a very worried expression. She tries to play it cool by telling him she was just going to take out some money so they can buy what they need for the house. He lunges forward and grabs the box from her, screaming that he won't give it to her because the witch hag will just steal it again. Takaco is completely caught off guard by the name he used and immediately wonders who on earth the kid is talking about. It hits her that the kid's grandmother was a total nightmare who treated them both like garbage whenever she was around. She tries to be the voice of reason and tells him that even if his grandma is mean, he shouldn't call her names. Harudo is dead serious, though, saying the money is for finding his father, and he will leave the house if she touches a single cent. Takaco is absolutely stunned that this tiny kid is actually threatening to run away over a small box of savings. Instead of backing down, she calls his bluff and points toward the entrance, telling him the front door is right there. The poor kid freezes, clearly not expecting his mother to actually tell him to leave when he was just trying to be brave. The boy actually goes through with it and slams the door shut, walking out into the hallway alone. The bravado doesn't last long, and soon the little guy is leaning against the door wailing for his mama to let him back in. Takaco stands on the other side of the door listening to his heartbreaking cries and feeling like a total monster for testing him. She remembers the novel plot where Harudo eventually finds his father and abandons his mother, and she realizes she has to change that ending right now. She realizes that if the child is destined to be with the main leads anyway, she might as well send him now so he can live a life of luxury. She decides to take the gamble and finally reaches for the business card she received earlier that day. She stares at the contact information, debating whether or not she should actually make the call that changes everything. Harudo watches her from the side, looking confused about why his mother is suddenly so focused on a piece of paper. Harudo is left completely speechless and confused by his mother's sudden change of heart. When she arrives at the massive company headquarters, the sheer scale of the towers makes her realize just how much power the male lead actually holds. Her heart is racing as she prepares to walk inside, knowing she is about to walk straight into the lion's den. She is absolutely blown away by the incredible wealth of the empire the male protagonist has built. Harudo quickly spots her in the lobby and rushes over to apologize for keeping her waiting. She tries her best to maintain her composure, even though being in such a high-class environment makes her feel totally out of place. She firmly tells Harudo that it is already too late for a checkup today, promising to bring her son back tomorrow morning to handle everything. She stares him down, refusing to be intimidated by his empty threats or acknowledge any consequences. He was convinced she was part of some elaborate scheme cooked up by his many enemies. He thought he had been way too soft lately if a random woman thought she could just pull this off. The tension in the lobby was thick enough to cut with a knife as he turned away. She was not finished yet and had one more card to play to prove she was telling the truth. She dropped the specific location and the exact time, mentioning the Sky River Hotel from 6 years ago. That name hit him like a freight train and stopped him dead in his tracks. Everything started rushing back to him as he stood in that massive, expensive lobby. The blurry pieces of the puzzle from that night were finally falling into place. He looked at her with pure shock, finally realizing she was indeed the one from that night. He could not believe he was actually facing her again after all this time. She pushed Harudo forward, telling him to run a DNA test if he was still so skeptical. She had nothing to hide and was ready to prove the boy's parentage right then and there. Without another word, she marched over to the front desk to borrow some paper and a pen. She was on a mission and was not leaving until she made her point crystal clear. She scribbles down her contact info and slaps the paper into his hand with total confidence. She tells him to call her the second he has the results, so they can figure out their next move. She leaned down to Harudo and told him this was his papa, asking the boy to stay healthy. She promised she had kept her word about finding him before saying her goodbyes. Then she just walked away, leaving the two of them standing alone in the middle of the lobby. It was the ultimate power move and left him completely stunned. She pushed through the revolving doors without looking back a single time. Our girl was gone, leaving him to deal with the absolute bombshell she just dropped in his lap. He stood there like a statue, staring at the tiny piece of paper in his hand. His whole world was spinning from the weight of her words. He was totally speechless, just trying to process the fact that his past had finally caught up to him in the most unexpected way. Little Harudo started tearing up, asking if his mama was really abandoning him for good. The poor kid was heartbroken and confused by her sudden exit from the building. He snapped back to reality and barked orders at his assistant to call the hospital. He needed they to prepare for a test immediately because he could not wait a second longer for the truth. He let out a long, frustrated sigh, feeling the massive weight of the situation crashing down on him. This was not how he expected his afternoon to go at all. He knelt down to comfort the crying boy, promising they would go to the hospital for the test first. He was trying his best to be gentle despite being completely overwhelmed by the situation. Harudo sniffles and asks him to make sure Mama forgives him because he must have made her angry. He just nods and promises he will take care of it as they walk together through the lobby. They walked out to the luxury SUV where his driver was already waiting. The staff was confused, but they knew better than to ask questions when the boss looked that serious. He climbed into the back seat with the boy and told the driver to head straight to the hospital. He was in no mood for any more delays or distractions. The assistant could not help but comment on how this felt like a scene straight out of a typical drama cliché. He told everyone to stay tuned for the next wild twist in this story. They arrived at the Kiria Group Central Hospital in record time. It was a massive, high-end facility owned by his family, ensuring complete privacy for the sensitive test they were about to perform. The head doctor rushed out to meet the car, greeting the president with total respect. He could tell by the boss's face that something huge was going down. He told the doctor to have the results delivered directly to his home once they were finished. He wanted this handled with the utmost discretion and speed. The head doctor starts sweating bullets as he processes the gravity of the situation. He knows that the results inside this folder will change the president's life forever. He brings the boy back to his massive estate to wait for the final results. The quiet of the mansion only makes the anticipation feel even more suffocating. They sit in the living room in total silence as the air turns thick with awkwardness. He keeps glancing at the boy, wondering if they really share the same blood after all. Harudo just sits there clutching a pillow, looking like he carries the weight of the entire world on his tiny shoulders. The CEO is sweating bullets, having absolutely no idea how to talk to a kid. He is used to high-stakes boardrooms, not being a potential father to a 5-year-old. Harudo finally speaks up and tells him not to bother trying to talk until the results are officially confirmed. The kid is surprisingly cold and direct for his age. He is actually impressed by how composed and mature the little guy is being. It is a huge help for him since he is terrible at forced small talk anyway. Harudo goes right back to his silent vigil on the couch, looking away. He is a mini version of the boss, and the resemblance is starting to show in his attitude. He tells the kid to make himself comfortable and that he will be in his study if he needs anything. He needs some space to think about how much his life is about to change. The boy just gives a short, quiet reply before going back to his own thoughts. He is staying firm on his word about not talking until the truth is finally out. 4 long hours pass as they wait for the lab to finish their work. The anticipation is killing everyone inside that massive mansion. He muttered to himself about how he could not believe the shocking results he was looking at. This was the kind of discovery that would change everything for the Empire. He took a deep breath and squinted, trying to steady his nerves before delivering the news to the president. He knew the boss was not going to take this lightly. He pumped himself up, telling himself it was finally time to face the music. He marched toward the house, ready to reveal the truth about the child. He walked through the silent halls of the mansion, heading straight for the study where he knew the president was waiting. The whole place felt like it was holding its breath. The doctor heads straight to the study, but stops when he sees little Harudo waiting there. He gives the boy a polite nod, realizing the family resemblance is way too strong to ignore. He reaches the office door and knocks, ready to deliver the life-changing news to his boss. He steps inside the study and prepares to hand over the document that contains the answers they have been waiting for. Our guy takes the report with a trembling hand and reads the words that change everything. It's official, the DNA doesn't lie, and he now has proof that this child is his own flesh and blood. The doctor confirms there is absolutely no doubt about the results, leaving him staring at the paper in total disbelief. He tells the doctor he did a good job and dismisses him, wanting to be completely alone as he processes the truth. He completely loses it and collapses into his chair as the shock finally settles in. He can barely wrap his head around the fact that he's actually a father. Kiria walked back into the living room, where the little guy was waiting patiently on the couch. Kiria finally catches his breath and tries to play the dad role, but he can barely get a coherent sentence out as he awkwardly addresses the kid as his son for the first time. The kid was not having it, though, telling Kiria that until things were totally certain, he was not his son. Kiria just held up that official document and asked the boy if he could read the results that proved their connection. Harudo admitted he couldn't read the whole thing, but warned Kiria that being a kid didn't mean he was easy to fool. He was about to say more when the doorbell suddenly rang, breaking the heavy tension in the room. Just as Kiria tries to bridge the gap, the doorbell rings and cuts the tension right in half, leaving him looking lost while his son stays glued to the couch. It was his assistant, looking a bit surprised to see his boss in such a domestic setting. The assistant handed over some important files that Kiria had specifically requested earlier that day. Kiria immediately started flipping through the pages, his expression becoming serious as he scanned the data. He kept reading, his brow furrowing as he absorbed whatever information was contained in those secret files. Something in the report clearly caught him off guard, causing him to shoot a sharp look toward his subordinate. The assistant just stood there awkwardly while Kiria closed the folder, clearly deep in thought about his next move. Seeing his boss prioritize his private life over corporate business makes the assistant realize the president is becoming more human because of Takaco Tsukushima. The assistant realized there was no way he could keep news this big to himself for much longer. The sun started to set, casting long shadows across the luxury apartment as the afternoon faded away. Later on, Kiria sat across from the boy, trying to figure out how to bridge the gap between them. Harudo hopped down from the sofa, clearly bored with sitting around and ready to get moving. He reminded Kiria about the promise to see his mama, but Kiria teased him by saying he hadn't actually agreed yet. Kiria leaned in and told the kid that before they went anywhere, he should start calling him Dad. That set the boy off, and he grabbed Kiria's face while yelling at him for having no manners and bad-mouthing his mom. Realizing the kid was fiercely loyal, Kiria decided it was finally time to have a real talk with the woman herself. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number, his heart probably racing just a little bit. Over at her place, Takaco is casually eating dinner when she sees his name pop up and asks with a smirk if he finally confirmed that Harudo is really his flesh and blood. She was playing the long game here, knowing that in the original story, her son was supposed to be pushed out of the family business. Even though Harudo can be a bit ungrateful, she is determined to make sure her real son gets everything he deserves so he won't be pushed out like in the original story. Takaco leaned on her hand and tapped her chin, plotting the best way to handle her powerful ex. Kiria was momentarily silenced by her bluntness, realizing she was just as sharp as the kid she raised. He stared at his phone after she hung up, feeling the weight of the complicated situation he was now in. He turned back to the boy and promised to take him to see her tomorrow, but first he wanted to know about their past. Harudo just crossed his arms and asked why he should bother sharing anything with a guy like him. He pointed out that since Kiria didn't even know he existed until today, there was no reason for him to know now. Kiria looked totally stunned, realizing that winning over this mini version of himself was going to be an uphill battle. The kid just wanted to know where his room was, so Kiria called for the housekeeper to show him the way. He told the boy his room was on the second floor and to follow the staff. The housekeeper gently took Harudo's hand to lead him upstairs to his new living quarters. Before leaving, the boy turned back with a suspicious look, asking Kiria if he was planning to pull some kind of trick on him. Kiria just gave a small smile and waved his hand, promising that he wasn't looking to fool anyone. Harudo made sure to give him one last reminder to call his mama by her proper name, Takaco Tsukushima. Kiria agreed to use her name and told the cheeky little brat to go get some rest for their big trip. He assured the boy that if he needed anything, he should just ask the housekeeper. He watched the boy disappear down the hall, marveling at how much personality was packed into such a small person. Once he was alone, he called his assistant again to order a bunch of child supplies and fancy new clothes. He sat back on the couch, contemplating how his entire life had been turned upside down in a single day. The next morning, Kiria trades his suit for casual clothes and drives the boy to a rundown part of town. He hops out of the black SUV and gets ready to see exactly where this kid has been living. When they parked, Harudo hopped out of the car and told Kiria he could handle things from here. Kiria was surprised they were in such a cramped area and asked if this was really where they lived. Harudo confidently leads the way through the narrow alleys with a smug little smile, clearly having the time of his life being in charge for once. He shouted back for Kiriya to hurry up because he didn't want his mama waiting a second longer for him. Kiriya could only follow along, thinking about what a cheeky brat this kid really was. Little Harudo is totally running the show, leading Kiriya and a squad of suited bodyguards through the neighborhood like he owns the place. The locals can't help but stare at the handsome stranger, wondering what kind of wealthy family he could possibly come from. The neighborhood gossip mill starts churning immediately as the locals spot the crazy resemblance between the little guy and the handsome stranger behind him. They notice the resemblance immediately and start whispering about whether he could actually be the kid's father. Kiriya is fuming, thinking Harudo is way too rebellious and blaming Takaco's parenting for the kid's attitude. The boy keeps walking right up to a plain apartment building, leaving the billionaire completely out of his element. Kiriya is skeptical and asks if he really grew up here, but Harudo says the neighbors are great. Kiriya sighs and tells the kid they need to go see his mother before doing anything else. Harudo confidently knocks on the door, ready to bring this rich guy into his world. Meanwhile, Takaco is just getting back from the store when she spots a flashy car and a bodyguard. She checks her phone and gets annoyed that Kiriya is already there 20 minutes before their scheduled appointment. She walks right past the bodyguard without a care, annoyed that this guy doesn't even seem to understand what time means. She heads straight for her apartment, not wanting to keep the situation waiting any longer. Her neighbors stop her immediately, looking worried because they saw her son walking around with a group of strange men. Takaco gives them a reassuring smile and thanks them for looking out for her and Harudo. She brushes off their concerns and heads up the stairs to face whatever drama is waiting at her door. She finds Kiriya standing in the hallway looking impatient and tells him their appointment was for 10, so he needs to check his watch. She shoves her phone screen in his face to prove he is the one who is early and tells him to wait outside while she gets ready. She ducks inside and shuts the door right in his face, leaving him standing in the hallway. Kiriya stands there in total shock, completely speechless that she just slammed the door on a man of his status. Once she lets them in, she hands him a folder containing Harudo's birth certificate and all his medical records. Kiriya is caught off guard by how prepared she is, as she tells him to just call for paperwork. Harudo looks at the rich guy with total disdain, calling him useless right to his face while he fumbles with the papers. Her bluntness and total lack of drama catch him completely off guard, leaving him actually sweating under the pressure. He tries to regain some control and knocks on the door again, hoping to finally get a proper conversation started. He tries to find his words, but she is already moving on to the next thing. The group finally moves into the small apartment, which is way humbler than anything Kiriya is used to. They finally settle into the apartment, which is small but surprisingly neat and tidy. Kiriya takes a good look around the space, realizing this is where his son has been living all these years. He looks serious as he takes in the humble surroundings of the small home. Takaco decides it is best to get the kid out of the room and tells Kiriya to make himself at home, while she guides Harudo away. Harudo is hesitant to leave them alone, but she gently pulls him along toward the back of the apartment. Kiriya stands in the middle of the room, looking like a giant in such a small space. Left alone, Kiriya finds himself staring at a wall of photos and sees a side of Takaco as a devoted mother he never imagined. The wall is covered in photos of Harudo growing up, showing every stage of the kid's life with his mom. Kiriya is mesmerized by how gentle and happy Takaco looks in every single one of those pictures. He stares at the photos in awe, finally admitting to himself that the boy is the spitting image of him. He can't help himself and whips out his phone to snap a picture of the family memories he missed out on. Takaco walks back in and catches him looking at the photos, immediately asking for his conditions to start the negotiation. They move the conversation out to the small terrace to ensure they have enough privacy from the kid. They sit down across from each other at a small table, the air thick with everything that's been left unsaid for years. She stares him down with a serious expression, refusing to let the billionaire's presence intimidate her. She tells him to just lay it all out on the table, whatever thoughts or demands he has. Kiriya finally puts his cards on the table by sliding a massive check across the surface. Takaco stares at the life-changing amount of money, realizing her quiet life is about to change forever. She's completely stunned by the massive figure on the paper, hardly able to believe what she's actually seeing. She accepts the payout for her living expenses and promises to cooperate with Harudo's custody paperwork, making it clear she won't be a hurdle in the process. As they sit across from each other, the weight of the agreement settles between them, marking the end of their old life. But before they finalize everything, she raises a finger and tells him there is just one more thing she needs. Kiria immediately gets cynical, waiting to see exactly how much extra cash she's going to try and squeeze out of him now. Instead of asking for money, she just gives him a soft, genuine smile that catches him completely off guard. She tells him to take good care of Harudo, because the kid has already been through a lot staying by her side all this time. She looks him right in the eye and asks him to give her his word that he will actually be a good father. Kiria promises her without hesitation, reminding her that the boy is his son after all. Harudo's mother and father wait anxiously for their son to finish packing up his life. They finally decide it is time to head inside and face the heartbreaking reality of him leaving. They reach the door and get ready to face the emotional reality of what is happening. When they walk into the room, they find our boy Harudo working hard to make sure nothing gets left behind. Takaco watches him pack his desk lamp and jokes that he looks ready to rip the walls out and take them too. But Harudo seriously explains he would only do it if there were more room in the suitcase. Seeing how much the kid is trying to bring makes Takaco feel a heavy weight in her chest. Then the little guy drops a total heartbreaker and asks if his mama can just come live with them too. Takaco has to stay strong and reminds him that they already talked about how this was going to work. Harudo looks absolutely crushed by the rejection, but he tries his best to be a brave little man. Takaco tells herself she definitely wouldn't want to eat with them anyway, because she can't stand looking at Kiria's stuck-up and expressionless face. She tries to cheer Harudo up by promising that his papa is going to take him out to eat something really delicious tonight. She reaches down and gives him a gentle pat on the head to comfort him one last time. She tells him to be a good boy and listen to his dad, promising to spend plenty of time with him once her work is finally finished. Kiria notices just how incredibly attached the kid is to his mother, and it clearly makes him think. He leans down and finally clicks the suitcase shut, signaling that it is officially time for them to head out. The flowers outside are blooming, but the mood is definitely bittersweet as they prepare to leave for his father's house. Kiria takes the lead with the heavy luggage, while Takaco follows behind holding her son's hand for the last few steps. Harudo stops and makes her promise over and over that she will come back for him on the day she said. She smiles through the pain and tells him not to worry because she is definitely coming for him. As soon as the door slams shut, the room feels painfully empty, and Takaco is left standing there all by herself. She lets out a huge sigh and wonders why she feels so hurt when she was the one who decided to send him back to his father. She takes a seat to clear her head and recalls a fashion contest mentioned in the book, realizing the original Takaco's design degree gives her the perfect chance to enter. Our girl realizes she has to get moving, so she pulls out her phone to figure out how to withdraw Harudo from school and quit her own dead-end job. Half an hour later, she arrives at the kindergarten and starts complaining about how much of a hassle the paperwork is compared to quitting a job. She reminds herself that this is just the reality of being a mother now, and she has to handle it properly. The school grounds are peaceful, but she is about to walk into a whole mess of drama. She sits down in the director's office, and he mentions how much of a shame it is to lose Harudo since he was such a good student. Takaco explains that the situation has changed, and he is living with his father now, so he just can't attend anymore. The director accepts it and tells her where she needs to sign the final papers. The director processes the final paperwork while Takaco handles the formalities, but the atmosphere shifts when he brings up an incident involving a bully. As she is signing the documents, he suddenly brings up the incident with that bully Ryuta from the other day. He tells her the parents should be arriving any minute to offer a formal apology for what happened. Takaco narrows her eyes because she definitely hasn't forgotten about the brat who bullied her son. Suddenly, there is a loud knock on the door, and the tension in the room shoots through the roof. The teacher opens the door and introduces Ryuta's mother, who is dressed like she is headed to a gala instead of a school meeting. The arrogant woman immediately demands to know if Takaco's son was the one who dared to hit her precious Ryuta. Takaco just sits there and sighs because this is the exact opposite of the apology she was promised. The bully mom actually has the nerve to point her finger right in Takaco's face, like she is the one in the wrong. Takaco demands to know if this insult is the apology the director promised, leaving the man stuttering about a possible misunderstanding. He tries to calm things down, but you can tell he is totally intimidated by the wealthy bully mother. The woman keeps going off and calls Harudo a wild brat, saying there was nothing wrong with her son hitting him. Oh man, she messed with the wrong mother today. Takaco finally snaps and grabs a utility knife from the desk, sliding the blade out with a look that would terrify a professional killer. She lunges forward and pins the woman down with the knife held right against her face. She asks the lady who exactly she thinks the wild one is, while the director watches in absolute horror. She holds the sharp edge against the woman's face and warns her to think twice before opening her mouth again. Takaco calmly explains that she is going to give her a nice 2-centimeter scar and then make her pay the medical bills on top of it. She asks how that sounds for a fair trade. The lady starts screaming for her to stop and promises she will apologize and pay whatever it takes as long as she doesn't get cut. Takaco suddenly bursts out laughing and asks if the woman actually took her seriously, because she was clearly just playing a joke on her. She tosses the knife back into the pen holder like it was nothing and watches the woman crumble into her chair. The director looks like he is about to have a heart attack from the stress. Takaco turns cold and tells the woman she will take the money, but she doesn't care about a fake apology. She demands that the woman's son apologize directly to her own child to settle the matter once and for all. This woman has some serious nerve, demanding an apology when her own son was clearly the one who started the fight. The school director looks like he wants to disappear as he asks Miss Akimoto if she needs to see the video again. Akimoto tries to play the whole thing off as just kids being kids and messing around. Takaco is absolutely livid and calls out every single lie about the eraser and the insults. Takaco shuts down the ridiculous excuses by listing every single way the other kid messed up, from the false accusations to the physical bullying. Our girl stares the bully mom down and asks her a very pointed question. She wants to know if it would still be considered just a joke if she decided to throw a punch herself. The toxic woman is absolutely shocked that someone would have the audacity to threaten her like that. Takaco finally hits her breaking point and decides to give the woman a taste of her own medicine. She stands up and shoves the toxic mother right to the ground in a total power move. The rude woman crashes onto the floor while Takaco towers over her with an intimidating gaze. This show of force makes it very clear that messing with Harudo comes with serious consequences. Takaco looms over her and tells her to stop being so dramatic since a tiny fall like that isn't going to kill her. She sits back down and delivers a perfectly timed, sarcastic apology, claiming her body just moved on its own out of pure self-defense. The lady starts throwing a massive tantrum and threatens to call the police so she can see Takaco thrown in jail. Takaco looks completely unimpressed by the theatrical display and calls her out for putting on such a shallow act to escape responsibility. She makes it clear she won't allow a parent to just gloss over everything with empty words. The room goes dead silent as Takaco waits for this lady to realize she has lost this battle. Akimoto finally realizes she isn't winning this and tells them to just let it end right here. She storms out of the room in a huff while Takaco casually reminds her to pay the medical bills on her way out. Takaco turns back to the director and demands he send her the security footage of the fight immediately. The school director is left standing there completely stunned by how quickly the entire situation spiraled out of control. While she's trying to focus on her work, she gets a heart-wrenching call from Harudo begging for help before the line suddenly goes dead. She frantically tries to call back to find out what happened, but her phone is being completely useless and won't connect. She storms out of her apartment while cursing at her phone for failing her at the worst possible moment. She hops into a taxi and tells the driver to step on it because she needs to get to the Kiria Group building immediately. She is absolutely fuming because it's only been a few days since she left Harudo with Asahi, and he's already failing at his job. Driven by a mother's instinct, Takaco marches straight into the headquarters to confront the man she thinks is responsible for her son's tears. The receptionist hesitates for a moment because she feels like she's seen this woman's face somewhere before. The receptionist tries to act like Takaco is just another random person looking for a handout. Our girl doesn't back down and tells her to just mention her name, since that will definitely get the boss's attention. Takaco spots the man she's looking for across the lobby and screams his name so loud that the entire room goes silent. She doesn't care about making a scene as long as she gets answers about her son. The receptionist frantically picks up the phone to figure out why the boss isn't answering his line during such a crisis. Asahi stops in his tracks and turns around to see exactly who would dare to cause such a massive scene in his lobby. The entire staff starts whispering and wondering if this woman has a death wish for screaming at the president like that. Takaco gets right in his personal space and tells him she can't believe he has the nerve to act confused. The staff members are losing their minds because they have never seen the president explain himself. Takaco demands to know why he is being so irresponsible and not watching Harudo like he promised. The entire office staff is absolutely stunned to see their powerful president getting completely dominated by this woman's sheer intensity. She doesn't care who's watching as she rips into him for ignoring his phone, while poor Harudo was left crying and alone. Asahi is completely caught off guard when he hears that Harudo was crying and demands to know what happened. She makes it clear she's not interested in his confusion and demands to see her son so she can take him home immediately. He finally pulls out his phone to check his missed calls and realizes he has a mountain of notifications he missed while working. She types out that she thinks she might have been extremely rude to the president's wife, and she is terrified. Panic sets in as the receptionist realizes she might have just committed social suicide and frantically texts her coworkers that she was way too rude to the president's wife. The receptionist panics as she realizes she is in way over her head and desperately checks her phone for instructions. The company group chat is blowing up with pictures of the cold president getting chewed out by a mysterious woman. The other employees are already gossiping about how the boss finally met his match. Our girl is not playing around and demands a real explanation before she just takes her son and leaves for good. Asahi tries to act smooth and offers to take her back to the house himself so they can check on things together. She is not in the mood for any of his games and demands the address immediately because she wants to handle this her way. He has to remind her that cars from the outside aren't even allowed into that exclusive villa area without his permission. She stops in her tracks and lets out a long, frustrated sigh because she knows he is right about the security. She tells him to quit standing around and just get moving already, because every second they waste is another second her son is crying. Asahi is clearly reaching his limit with her attitude and looks like he is about to blow a fuse. The office staff is absolutely stunned to see their cold president looking so small and defeated next to this woman. The ride to the villa is dead silent, and you could cut the tension in the car with a knife. The assistant behind the wheel is thinking the poor kid has it rough with a cool dad and a hot-tempered mom. They pull up to the massive estate, and it is clear there is the big leagues of high society wealth. Seeing just how much is at stake, she decides she needs to legally secure this entire estate for her son. She starts planning how to get this place in the kid's name before some stepmother enters the picture and pushes him out. The second they step inside, they find the entire staff in a total state of panic and searching every room of the house. The maids are all looking like they are about to lose their jobs, and they are clearly terrified of the consequences. Asahi finally realizes that his staff has been hiding a massive disaster from him while he was away. Asahi looks at his staff and knows something has gone horribly wrong while he was busy at the office. One of the maids drops the bombshell and tells them that the young master has actually gone missing from the house. She's trembling with fear and looks like she is on the verge of tears because she knows this is a disaster. Asahi loses his cool and orders every single person to get more people and start a search of the grounds immediately. Our girl tries to stay focused and asks what could have possibly made Harudo so angry in the first place. The maid mentions that it had something to do with the two boys who live in the house next door. Before they can get more info, the head butler, Kashima, steps in to take control of the chaotic situation. He sends the maids off to keep looking so he can talk to the boss and explain what happened privately. He explains that things were perfectly normal until Asahi left for work earlier that morning, but everything changed quickly. It sounds like a total disaster went down the moment his back was turned, and the situation exploded into chaos. Kashima bows and tries to maintain some professional order in the middle of all this rising panic and stress. Our girl hones in on the details and asks for the specific names of those kids from the Ito family. The butler is totally caught off guard by her presence and wonders why she is here with his boss. Asahi gives him a quick nod to answer her questions, without holding anything back about the neighbor's children. Kashima reveals their names are Yuya and Genki, and that's when the gears start turning in our girl's head. She realizes these kids are the heroine's nephews, and they weren't even supposed to show up until much later in the story. He admits he thought Harudo would be happier if he had other children to play with. Our girl is not in the mood for excuses and looks like she is about to explode at him. Our girl has officially reached her limit and makes it clear that she is done listening to any more of his pathetic excuses. She lets out a scream that echoes through the entire mansion as she calls out for her son with everything she has got. The staff is frozen in shock because nobody has ever dared to raise their voice like this in the president's presence. Kashima is completely stunned as he realizes this is the mysterious mother everyone has been gossiping about. She takes a deep breath to calm her nerves after the frantic search for her son. Harudo cries out for his mama and sprints as fast as he can to dive into her arms. She holds him close and promises that everything is going to be okay now that she's here. Asahi tries to step forward and play the part of a concerned father, but she clearly wants nothing to do with him. She shoots him a look of pure hatred that tells him he better keep his distance if he knows what's good for him. She kneels down and desperately checks her son to see if he's been hurt anywhere. Her heart breaks as she carefully looks him over for any signs of a serious injury. The room falls silent as the poor boy tries to find the words to tell her what happened. He tearfully points to the bruise on his forehead and shows her exactly where those bullies hit him. Mom asks poor little Harudo if his head still hurts after that nasty bump he got earlier. The little guy puts on his saddest face and confirms it really hurts him. Then he turns up the volume, crying as loud as he possibly can to get all the sympathy. Mom sees right through him and chuckles, telling him he's being a bit too dramatic with the fake tears. Kiriya steps in and tells Harudo to answer his mother, instead of just standing there like a statue. Our girl gives him a gentle pat on the head, and Harudo finally calms down. Without another word to the cold-hearted CEO, she grabs her son and starts walking away. She bluntly tells the CEO not to follow them, leaving the powerful man frozen in place and absolutely speechless. The old butler watches his master get rejected, probably never seeing the man so speechless in his life. He thinks to himself that this is a day for the history books, since it's the first time Kiriya ever brought a woman home. The butler and the younger staff member share a look, completely blown away by the scene they just witnessed. The assistant is actually proud of this, showing the butler a photo he took of their boss getting put in his place. He finds it hilarious that the powerful president looks like a little kid getting a lecture from his mom. The butler smiles, thinking that even if they aren't official yet, he should probably start calling her madam. The butler notes that the master has already accepted the situation, signaling a massive shift in the household dynamic. Back on the sofa, Mom and Harudo finally have a moment of peace to themselves to talk things out. She tells the little guy he can stop the act now since his dad is out of earshot. Harudo breaks character with a cheeky little laugh, clearly proud of how he manipulated the situation. She gets serious for a second and asks him to explain exactly what happened at that school. She teases him, asking if he is brave enough to repeat that story at the police station later. Harudo admits he just really missed her and was upset because she never came to see him like she promised. Then he drops a bombshell, saying that Kiriya was the one who wouldn't let him visit her at all. The poor kid even says that anyone who keeps him from his mama doesn't deserve to be called a father. This makes her blood boil, as she realizes Kiriya was intentionally keeping her son away from her all this time. She stands up, her mind racing with anger at that arrogant jerk for playing games with their lives. She takes a deep breath to steady herself before she does something she might regret in front of the kid. She tells Harudo that she is taking him home right now, and he is not staying here a second longer. As they head out, she shoots one last cold look back at Kiriya to let him know he is in trouble. Kiriya tries to say something to the two of them, but he is clearly struggling to find the right words. Suddenly, the door swings open, and a woman named Ito Manami walks in with two other boys in tow. This is Kiriya's sister-in-law, and she looks a bit nervous to be dropping in unannounced like this. She pushes her two sons forward, telling them they need to apologize to Harudo right this second. Harudo isn't having it, shouting that he hates them and telling them to never call him that nickname again. Kirya immediately takes the wrong side and demands his son apologize for being rude. She snaps at Kirya for being a terrible father and demanding an apology without even knowing what happened. She orders Kirya to follow her immediately so they can have a serious conversation in private. She gives Harudo a soft smile and tells him to wait there for just a minute while she talks to his father. They walk down the hallway together with a tension between them so thick it could be cut with a knife. She explains that those bullies were calling Harudo a fatherless brat and even named their dog after him. Hearing the truth hits Kirya like a ton of bricks as he realizes how much his son has been suffering. She reminds him that she isn't the one he needs to be apologizing to right now. He knows he needs to make things right, even if it means swallowing his massive ego for once. They find the little boy alone in the hallway, looking small and upset. The powerful CEO finally swallows his pride and drops to one knee to beg his son for another chance. His mother gently encourages him to listen, pointing out that his father is actually being sincere for once. After thinking it over for a moment, Harudo decides he is willing to forgive his father this time. From the shadows, Manami watches the happy reunion and starts to panic about her own future. She is absolutely horrified to discover that this newcomer is actually Harudo's mother. Knowing she's about to lose her grip on the family, she prepares to call for backup to stop this woman from taking everything. The family stands in the middle of the grand hallway, finally together after so much chaos. Harudo's dad tries to play it cool, saying a little scrap between kids isn't worth forcing an apology over. But Manami isn't having it, insisting that she won't feel right unless they offer a proper apology. She turns her gaze toward Harudo, and the pressure in the room starts to rise. Harudo is sweating bullets, terrified that if his mom finds out the truth, he is going to get a world-class smack. He remembers his friend Busuk's advice that when things get messy, the best move is to just run for your life. He tries to pull a ninja move and sneak away, but a hand suddenly snatches the back of his shirt. His mom has that terrifying aura radiating off her, as she asks him exactly where he thinks he is going. He tries to play it off with a nervous smile, claiming he was just practicing his ninja skills. Our boy looks over at his dad with pleading eyes, hoping for some backup in this desperate moment. He is internally screaming for his useless papa to save him from his mom's wrath. The dad catches the signal and realizes the kid is begging him to cover for whatever trouble he caused. While Harudo is stuck in his mom's grip, the dad just stands there wondering how to handle this family dynamic. Manami is fuming on the sidelines, absolutely disgusted by how lovey-dovey and perfect they look together. One of the twins looks completely petrified, as he realizes their little secret isn't going to stay hidden for long. Harudo's mom notices the tension and politely asks Ms. Ito if she is doing all right. Manami snaps out of it and forces a fake smile, insisting that everything is just fine. Manami quickly flips the script with a fake smile and claims she's totally fine. But our girl isn't buying the act for a second, because she knows exactly how this woman hides her true colors. Our girl watches her carefully, knowing Manami is the kind of person who uses kindness to hide her real motives. She remembers from the original story that while this woman seems caring, she only ever acts for her own family's gain. For Harudo's future, our girl knows she is eventually going to have to deal with this two-faced snake. Manami suddenly turns on her own kids, demanding they apologize for their behavior immediately. He realizes the tension won't fade until they finally accept a formal apology to put this matter to rest. He walks over to the twins and asks Yuya and Genki to explain their side of the story. He asks if they really got into a heated argument with Harudo earlier. Surprisingly, the twins both shake their heads and say that isn't what happened at all. Harudo's mom is stunned, wondering what on earth her son did to make these two cover for him. Harudo just gives her a cool look, claiming he didn't do anything and they are just being honest. The dad isn't buying it for a second, suspecting that these kids are definitely up to something again. It turns out the twins were originally fighting over who broke a toy, blaming each other for the mess. They were screaming and calling each other liars, while the adults weren't looking. He waits for the boys to come clean, putting them on the spot to finally tell the truth. The twins explain that Harudo told them to settle it with a fight and let the winner be right. Our girl is absolutely floored that her son's solution to a disagreement was basically a trial by combat. Manami looks like she wants the floor to swallow her whole as she realizes how much trouble her kids caused. She admits that she only came over to be polite, but her kids ended up causing a massive scene instead. She grabs the twins and starts hauling them toward the door, scolding them for being so destructive. The little guys offer one last bow and apologize to Harudo before being dragged away. Harudo completely loses his composure and starts sobbing as he buries his face in his mom's lap. She's caught off guard by the sudden burst of emotion from her usually tough son. Now that the intruders are finally leaving, she tries to break the awkward silence, but the tension between her and the stoic CEO is still through the roof. The dad has seen enough and signals for the butler to escort the guests off the property. Manami promises they will pay for every single thing that was broken during the chaos. The manor finally starts to feel quiet again as the unwelcome guests make their exit. They walk through the main gates, but the atmosphere is still thick with unresolved tension. Manami immediately pulls out her phone to text Eri, warning her that things are getting way too serious. Back inside, Harudo is still clinging to his mom for dear life, but the dad is starting to get suspicious, wondering if the kid's emotional display was actually just a clever act to protect her. She can't help but smirk as she watches her son try to act like a total angel. She pinches his cheeks and asks if he really expected her to fall for his little performance. Harudo realizes he is in big trouble and tries to use his puppy dog eyes to soften her up. She tells him to cut it out and follow her to his room for a real talk. They settle into his room, but the atmosphere is definitely not the cozy moment he was hoping for. She immediately calls him out for manipulating the guests to fight each other, while he stayed safe on the sidelines. Harudo tries the cute act again, but she puts her hand up and shuts that down immediately. The little guy looks down at the floor, finally realizing that he might have pushed his luck too far this time. She tries to stay firm and keep her serious face on despite how much she wants to just hug him. Harudo stands there with big, watery eyes as the guilt finally begins to hit him like a truck. She lets out a heavy sigh, trying to let go of all the stress from the past few hours. She asks him if he has any idea how worried he made her while clutching his tiny hands. Poor Harudo is a total mess, sobbing uncontrollably as he listens to her heartfelt lecture about safety. He finally breaks and shouts how sorry he is while lunging at her for a hug. She pulls him in close, realizing that after all the tension, he just needs his mom to be there for him. Harudo is absolutely overjoyed when he finds out they are finally getting out of this stuffy old manor. Mom helps him pack his things as quickly as possible so they can make a fast exit. Suddenly, a knock at the door ruins the moment and catches them both off guard. The big boss himself, Mr. Kiriya, walks into the room and asks for a private moment with her. She follows him into the grand library, ready for whatever nonsense he has planned next. She gives him a mental middle finger for dragging her away when she was finally about to leave. He pulls up the security footage, showing the entire fight from start to finish on his screen. Our girl watches the footage, seeing exactly how her son handled those goons with ease. Kiriya tries to take control of the situation by suggesting that Harudo needs much stricter discipline. Kiriya is momentarily stunned that she actually agreed with his parenting advice for once. She tells him she absolutely intends to be firm and strict about this situation moving forward. She gives him a chillingly sweet smile that proves she is several steps ahead of his power games. He tries to act like the man of the house, saying he is the one truly responsible. She snaps back and reminds him that a father who was never there has no right to lecture her on responsibility. She looks him dead in the eye with a look that says she is finished playing nice. She warns him that if he ever puts her son in danger again, she will erase him from their lives forever. She just shrugs like it is nothing, keeping her cool while he starts to lose his temper. She keeps her composure while Kiriya absolutely loses his mind over her cold revelation. He is completely stunned to find out she has been telling their son that his father has been dead this entire time. Kiriya absolutely loses his mind when she reveals that she has been telling their son his father is dead. This guy is absolutely speechless as he tries to figure out if she is actually being serious. She looks at him with total indifference, proving she is definitely not playing games anymore. Without another word, She turns her back on him and starts walking toward the library door. She reaches for the handle, ready to close this chapter and leave this house forever. She drops one final truth, telling him that her son only did this because he wanted to go home with his mother. He sits there in silence, forced to admit to himself that he really has failed as a father. The heavy doors slam shut behind her, leaving him alone with the realization that his own son would rather be anywhere else but here. He realizes he can't let her leave just yet, and calls out for her to stop before she disappears through the door. He quickly catches up to her, his expression tight as he prepares to make one last desperate move. She stops and turns around, wondering what kind of nonsense this man is about to pull now that she is halfway out the door. He presents a premium credit card, explaining that it is loaded with 1 million yen as a gift for her hard work. She takes the card and looks it over, amused that he thinks a bit of cash is enough to settle the score between them. She listens as he tries to play the gratitude card, but she can see right through his attempt to buy her loyalty. He starts to break a sweat when she does not immediately jump for joy at the sight of the money. She flashes him a sharp smile, keeping him on his toes as she waits to hear what he actually wants from her. He finally drops the act and asks her for a massive favor, wanting her to talk Harudo into staying at the manor. A cold smirk plays across her lips as she realizes he is still trying to use her as a tool for his own family drama. She shoves the card right back into his chest, making it clear that her integrity is not something he can just purchase. She walks away without looking back, leaving him stunned and alone to reflect on the fact that he completely failed to control her. Harudo gets busy packing his little suitcase as fast as he can. Mom walks in and tells him to take a break because it's time for dinner. Our little man starts panicking, wondering if his mom suddenly stopped wanting him around. She immediately softens up and gently holds his face to reassure him. She explains that they are actually going to stay here at the manor for a while. Mom is clearly doing this for her son's sake, even if it means dealing with the family drama. She playfully squishes his cheeks to cheer him up and reminds him how much she loves him. She gives him a warm smile and promises that everything is going to be just fine as long as they are together. Harudo finally agrees to stay, but he makes it clear it's only for a short time. She pets his head and says they can dive into the details later when they have more time. Mom wraps up their private chat by suggesting they finally head downstairs to grab some dinner. She wants to keep things peaceful for a bit before they have to deal with the rest of the family. Harudo gets a mischievous look and says he will go keep that lonely old man company. They arrive at the dining room where the father is already waiting for them. Dad immediately notices the strong bond between mother and son as they join him at the table. He can see that Harudo is sticking close to her, making his loyalties very clear from the start. Harudo makes a big show of pulling out his chair right next to his mother. Mom just smiles and tells him he can sit wherever he feels most comfortable. The father clears his throat, looking a bit grumpy at how much he is being ignored. Harudo gives him a look that says he is the one in charge of the situation. The tension in the room is thick as the two of them have a silent standoff. Dad finally hits his limit and snaps at the boy for being so difficult. He points out how irritating both Harudo and his own father can be, questioning why the kid didn't just leave with his mother like he was supposed to. Mom watches them and wonders if the father is seriously trying to pick a fight with a kid. Harudo crosses his arms, looking like a tiny executive ready to negotiate. Mom laughs and tells the dad that Harudo is just trying to be a good son. Harudo makes it very clear that his sudden good behavior is purely for his mother's sake. He wants the old man to know that this respectful act is strictly temporary and won't last forever. That comment hits the father like a ton of bricks, and he nearly chokes on his water. Mom tells Harudo to be good because Papa isn't young and his body isn't that strong. She gives him a smirk, knowing she is the one who started this whole mess. The father just sighs in defeat, realizing he cannot win against this mother-son duo. His phone starts ringing, giving him a much-needed excuse to escape the awkward dinner. He stands up and leaves the room to take the call, leaving the two of them alone. It is already 10 o'clock by the time the father finally finishes his work and heads back. He finds Harudo still awake, standing there with a glass of milk in his hand. Harudo just casually notes that the man has finally decided to show his face again. Dad tries to be the bigger person and welcomes the kid home with open arms, but Harudo isn't having any of it. He completely ignores the gesture and announces he's going to bed, leaving his father standing there feeling like a total loser. The father stands there in a daze, completely baffled by how a literal child can be so incredibly cold towards him. Harudo simply walks away without looking back, showing he couldn't care less about his father's hurt feelings. He turns to the butler and asks if the kid is just trying to act tough. It really bothers him that his own son won't even call him Papa. The butler explains that the young master stayed up late just to make sure Mama was okay. The dad realizes the kid is only tolerating him for the sake of his mother. Harudo rushes into the office to let his mom know that he is finally back from work, but she immediately corrects him and says he needs to start calling the man Papa. Seeing that it is already 10 o'clock, she tells the little guy it is way past his bedtime, but he refuses to leave and insists on sleeping in the room with her. After she gives him a playful poke and tells him to be a good boy for once, Harudo finally gives in and crawls over to his blankets. As he tucks himself in, he asks his mom not to disappear while he is sleeping, so she gently pets his head and promises to join him the moment her work is finished. She stays with Harudo until he falls asleep, but she knows she can't put off the talk with his father any longer. Bracing herself, she heads over to his room to settle things once and for all. She gives the door a firm knock, hoping to get the conversation over with as quickly as possible. The door swings open, and she completely freezes because the man is standing there in a loose bathrobe with water still dripping off his chest. They just stand there staring at each other in total silence, making the entire situation feel incredibly awkward. No way is she letting this go down like the book did. She's not here for any romance. She is here strictly for business and the sake of her kid. She reminds herself of the original character's ending, where she was kicked out into the pouring rain, and decides right then to keep things strictly professional. He breaks the silence by crossing his arms and asking her if something is actually wrong, or if she's just going to stand there all night. She refuses to let things play out like the novel, where the original character ended up homeless and miserable after a failed seduction attempt. She snaps at him, making it clear she isn't there to seduce him, and tells him to wipe that disgusted look off his face. She realizes coming to his room at this hour was a massive mistake, and vows to never do it again to avoid any more misunderstandings. He tells her to go wait in the study and promises to meet her there once he puts on some real clothes. She follows him down the hallway, trying her best to regain her composure after that face-to-face encounter with his abs. A few minutes later, he joins her in the study, and while he looks like a perfect model in his casual clothes, she reminds herself that his personality is absolute trash. She gets comfortable on the sofa and drops the news that Harudo has agreed to stay, but only if one specific condition is met. He listens intently, wondering what kind of demand his son could possibly have for him. She delivers the line with a straight face and tells him that Harudo will only stay if they get him a dog. Takaco leans in and asks him if he is actually going to step up and do this one thing for his son. She's pushing the dad and son bonding angle hard, making it sound like a golden opportunity to finally connect with the boy. He just sits there looking like his entire world is ending. He is not just hesitant, he is visibly breaking out in a cold sweat and shaking. He tries to find the words to object or make an excuse, but Takaco isn't backing down even an inch. Finally, he admits the embarrassing truth. This big, tough CEO is actually terrible when it comes to dealing with dogs. Takaco sees her opening and plays her absolute trump card. She tells him she will just take Harudo home tomorrow morning if he can't handle such a simple request. He finally loses his cool and shouts his agreement just to stop her from taking the kid and leaving. She successfully plays her final card and forces him to give in to the demand for a new pet. She stands up to leave before he can change his mind, leaving the powerful CEO looking completely defeated by a request for a puppy. Takaco gives him one last cheeky look and reminds him that he better not go back on his word to his son. She's grinning as she leaves the study because she just discovered a major secret weakness she can use to her advantage later. This is a total win for her, as she now knows the legendary and terrifying male lead is secretly petrified of tiny puppies. She remembers that in the original story, he was supposed to overcome this fear for the heroine, so she figures he might as well do it now for his kid. Takaco is practically humming to herself as she walks back to her room, feeling very satisfied with her night's work. The next morning arrives, and the atmosphere in the house is already starting to shift as the new plan goes into motion. Harudo is already busy planning out the details of the new doghouse, hoping it'll be fluffy and comfortable for his new pet. The dad is sitting there looking like he hasn't slept a wink, clearly terrified of the fact that he's about to have a furry roommate. Harudo notices his dad acting weird and asks if something is wrong, but the CEO just tries to play it cool while dying inside. He looks across the table and realizes the mother is missing, so he asks the kid why she isn't joining them for breakfast. Harudo drops a truth bomb and explains that Takaco was so mentally exhausted from yesterday that she's sleeping in until noon today. He is completely stunned that she has the nerve to sleep in that late and wonders if this is a regular habit for her. Harudo just keeps eating his toast and tells his dad that his mom predicted he'd ask that exact question. The little guy prepares to deliver the final message his mom left behind specifically for this moment. Harudo looks him dead in the eye and delivers the savage message his mom left. She said if he has time to worry about her, he should use that time to get his own life together. Harudo delivers the final blow by relaying his mother's harsh comments about his father's lazy attitude. He makes it clear that if his dad has enough energy to complain, then he has more than enough time to get back to work and be productive. He grits his teeth in total frustration at the sheer audacity she has to challenge him like this. He can't believe she actually has the nerve to send her son to do her dirty work. While he is downstairs losing his mind, Takaco is fast asleep and dreaming of her successful scheme. She rests easy knowing she won this round and secured a better future for her child. Takaco is finally enjoying a peaceful morning, where she can sleep in for as long as she wants without any interruptions. The blissful silence is instantly shattered when her phone starts vibrating across the nightstand. Someone is blowing up her line and completely ruining her perfect morning vibes. She answers the call with a groggy smile, expecting some good news to start her day. Her expression instantly shifts to pure shock when the neighbor tells her that her apartment has been completely trashed. She doesn't hesitate for a second and promises to head back immediately to see the damage for herself. The neighbor warns her to be careful since they still have no idea who is behind the attack. She grabs her jacket and prepares to leave, knowing she needs to move fast before the culprit returns. Her eyes turn sharp and focused as she prepares herself for the chaos waiting at her home. She shoves her phone into her pocket and focuses entirely on getting back as quickly as possible. Despite her determination, she can't help but feel incredibly stressed by the sudden news. Little Harudo catches her just as she's about to leave, sensing that something is very wrong with his mom. He asks her if the scary things he overheard on the phone are actually true. Takaco gives him a gentle pat on the head to try and ease his fears. She tells him not to worry about the house and reassures him that she has everything under control. Harudo watches from the hallway as his mother heads out to deal with the dangerous situation alone. The poor kid prays that his mama will be okay while she goes off to handle the disaster. She manages to hail a taxi and speeds across town toward her apartment building. Our girl wastes no time arriving on the scene and hops out of her car to inspect the damage. She is on high alert, scanning the perimeter to see exactly what kind of disaster she is walking into. The local busybodies are already gossiping about the incident and pitying her for being a struggling single mother. She overhears their whispers and is annoyed that her tragedy has become the talk of the town. Ignoring the noise, she sprints toward the entrance of the building to inspect the scene. When she reaches the hallway, she finds a crowd of neighbors already gathered outside her unit. The onlookers are visibly shaken by the level of destruction they can see from the doorway. A neighbor tries to talk to her, but Takaco remains focused on the disaster inside her home. She tells everyone to stay calm because she already called the police while she was on her way over. She finally steps inside and realizes the place is an absolute disaster zone with everything flipped upside down. The sight of her trashed home fills her with a cold fury as she vows to make the culprit pay. The police arrive shortly after, and she immediately identifies herself as the person who reported the crime. The lead officer begins the investigation by asking her to provide every detail about what happened. He hands her a document and asks her to sign off on the official incident report. She signs the paperwork and tells the officers that she is counting on them to find the person responsible. The officer reminds her to reach out immediately if she remembers any suspicious people from her past. With the initial report finished, the officers prepare to head out and begin their search for the culprit. Before leaving, the cop warns her that the place might not be safe and suggests she find somewhere else to stay. She stays quiet for a moment, letting the warning sink in as she starts to analyze who could have done this. She recalls that the original version of this character was too kind to have enemies, meaning someone is specifically targeting her. She begins running through a mental list of everyone she has offended since arriving in this new world. She considers Ryuta's mother as a suspect, but wonders if the lady is actually crazy enough to go this far. She realizes that while the mother is annoying, she would likely be more angry at her own son than at anyone else. She rules out the male lead and that fake old man from before. One wouldn't bother with something this petty, and the other is hopefully still rotting in a jail cell. Her eyes narrow as the puzzle pieces start falling into place. She is starting to get a very clear idea of who is behind this mess. Takaco realizes exactly who is behind the damage and pulls out her phone to handle things once and for all. She pulls her phone out and starts scrolling through her messages. She's going to get to the bottom of this right now without waiting another minute. The phone rings for a few seconds while she waits with a cold, calculating expression on her face. As soon as the call connects, she drops the act and asks if she is speaking to the person who trashed her place. She isn't playing games anymore. A loud, obnoxious laugh erupts from the phone on the other end. It is Ryuta's mom, and she sounds like she is having the time of her life. The woman starts screaming into the receiver, sounding totally unhinged and manic. She is clearly proud of the mess she made of the apartment. She mocks Takaco, calling her a chicken and thinking she has finally won. She is really leaning into her role as the neighborhood villain. Ryuta's mom is absolutely losing it, shouting about how insolent Takaco has been lately. She thinks this little stunt will put our girl in her place. Takaco leans back comfortably with her legs crossed and a smug smirk, telling the lady that her breath is so foul she can smell it through the phone. The woman is left absolutely stunned and speechless as the line suddenly goes dead. Our girl doesn't give her a single second to call back and immediately puts her number on the block list. She takes a deep breath and stretches, feeling relieved that she sent Harudo away early so he wouldn't be caught up in this mess. Back at the corporate office, this poor employee hands over his reports to the big boss for review. The president accepts the papers, but you can tell the atmosphere in the room is incredibly tense. The guy walks out looking absolutely drained because he just got chewed out by his high-ranking superior. He complains to his buddy that he has to redo everything by 2 p.m., and it's already late. His coworker points out that explains why all the meetings were packed into the morning schedule today. Suddenly, the guy realizes something and shouts out about the boss going on a secret date. His friend immediately panics and tries to muffle him before anyone else in the office hears him. He keeps the guy's mouth shut tight, terrified that the boss might hear them gossiping about his love life. The coworker tries to play it cool, saying age doesn't matter since the boss is young anyway. His buddy is impressed, thinking this guy is really climbing the corporate ladder with his bold attitude. But then he asks why he isn't sharing this juicy intel with the rest of the team. He checks a notification on his phone and gets a bad feeling about the rumors spreading through the company. He sees the entire group chat buzzing with wild rumors about his private and personal life. He sighs, thinking that these supposedly smart people really don't know when to shut their mouths. He decides to ignore the petty gossip for now and heads for the door with his jacket. He reaches for the handle, ready to shut down the circus happening right outside his private office. He walks right into the break room and catches them red-handed, asking if they are actually working. The employees freeze up instantly, looking exactly like deer caught in some very bright headlights. Since they have so much free time to talk, he assigns them the entire fashion contest schedule. He leaves them standing there in shock, probably regretting every single word they just said. Cut to the villa, where little Harudo is pacing around looking completely and utterly distraught. The butler tries his best to calm the little guy down, promising that his father is coming. Harudo looks up with teary eyes, wondering if his dad will even agree to help him out. Just then, the big boss walks through the front door and announces that he's finally home. He rushes over to greet his dad with a bright smile, looking as adorable as ever. The boss is in a great mood and imagines Harudo jumping into his arms with total joy. He asks the kid what he is grinning about, but the reaction he gets is totally unexpected. The boss feels a bit awkward when the kid doesn't give him the warm welcome he was expecting. He realizes something is seriously wrong when he sees the little guy looking completely miserable. Harudo drops a bombshell, admitting he doesn't want a dog anymore and just needs to see his mom. He stands his ground and insists on leaving right away, determined to get some answers. All the pent-up emotion finally comes out as the little guy starts wailing in the middle of the room. He tearfully explains that he overheard a neighbor saying their house was wrecked, and he knows his mom was lying to protect him. The boss looks concerned as he realizes the kid is much smarter than he originally thought. Seeing how much the little guy is hurting, he tells him to get ready to leave immediately. Harudo lights up instantly, thanking him and running off to grab his bag as fast as possible. The butler watches on with a soft smile, while the boss looks slightly worn out already. They head for the car immediately, with Harudo leading the way and shouting for everyone to hurry up. They finally arrive at the apartment complex and start making their way up the stairs. As they reach the front door, the boss notices that the place looks like a total disaster zone. Harudo urges the boss to move faster as they sprint through the narrow streets toward their destination. They feel a sense of dread as they race against time to see what happened. Despite the rush, the boss finds himself actually enjoying the little guy's company as they head inside. They arrive at the building and waste no time heading up the stairs to check on the situation. The moment the door opens, Harudo rushes to his mother while she stands there holding a mop in total disbelief. Takaco pulls her son into a tight hug as the little guy frantically checks to make sure his mom is okay. Confused by their sudden arrival, she demands to know what on earth they are doing at her apartment. The boss looks at the destruction and concludes that this woman is a literal magnet for disaster. Takaco stares at the empty space where her life used to be and realizes someone has truly wrecked her home. The realization of the theft hits hard when they notice that everything from the TV to the washing machine has been hauled away. Harudo looked at the empty space where their belongings used to be with wide eyes. He looked up at his mother, barely able to process the mess in their home. The poor kid just burst into tears, asking who could possibly do something so mean to them. Takaco pulled him into a warm hug, trying her best to stay strong for her son. She promised him they would just buy new things for everything that was broken or taken. She pulls her son into a tight embrace, while vowing to make the Akimoto family pay for everything they did to her home. The boss stood there silently, watching the heartbreaking scene unfold in the middle of the ruined apartment. He finally stepped forward and gently asked Harudo if he could give them a minute alone. The boss steps in to handle the heavy atmosphere and asks for a private moment to speak with the mother. She gently tells little Harudo to head to his room for a bit so the adults can handle this mess alone. Takaco told him to head to his room for a bit while they sorted things out. The little guy slowly made his way to his bedroom, clearly worried about what was happening. Once the door was shut, Takaco turned her attention back to the man in her living room. Of course, Harudo couldn't help but peek through the crack in the door to see the adults. She told the boss to sit down first so they could actually have a proper conversation. He looked at her with a complicated expression, his mind racing with everything he just learned. He drags a chair over to face her directly, but our girl thinks he's being way too dramatic for a simple conversation. He then asks her if she remembers when Harudo got that nasty cut on his forehead. Takaco fell silent for a moment, her mind drifting back to that day at the kindergarten. She remembered seeing her baby boy with a huge bandage on his head after a fight. The boss waited patiently for her to explain exactly what happened between those two little kids. Takaco sighed and said that fights between little boys happen all the time in school. She asked him if he was really that interested in why two toddlers were throwing hands. She explained that the main issue was how the other mother tried to just throw money around. Takaco refused the cash and demanded that her bratty son apologize to Harudo face to face. The boss shook his head, knowing a woman like that wouldn't just let things go so easily. Then our girl dropped a bombshell by admitting she lost her cool and threatened the woman. She used a box cutter to scare her a little, and the lady left screaming threats. He realized that this petty revenge was exactly what led to her apartment being ransacked tonight. He rubbed his face in frustration, telling her that her violent way of handling things was bad. That set her off, and she snapped back that she was still doing a better job. Suddenly, Harudo came charging back into the room, shouting that it must have been Ryuta. He was ready to head to kindergarten right then and there to punch the kid out. Takaco quickly grabs her son and tells him that he can't solve his problems with violence. She promises that the police will catch whoever did this and make them pay for the damage. Harudo looked totally unconvinced by his mother's words, his little face scrunched up in pure anger. The boss leaned down and asked if this Ryuta kid had been bullying him this whole time. Harudo admitted the kid kept calling him a nobody with no dad, but he fought back. Hearing his son was bullied for not having a father makes him clench his fist in rage. He tells Harudo that anyone saying those things is wrong because he has a father now, and he promises the boy he's not a nobody. He gave the boy a reassuring look and told him to leave the rest to his father. Takaco looked at him in total shock, her eyes softening as he finally stepped up today. He gently pats the boy's head to comfort him, leaving Takaco completely speechless at how this normally cold man is finally stepping up for her family. Their moment was interrupted by a sudden, deafening bang coming from the front door of the apartment. The door flew open as a group of thugs kicked their way into the private home. Takaco immediately shielded Harudo, while the boss stood his ground and kept his calm for them. Akimoto Tetsuya strolls into the apartment with his thugs, looking ready to deal with the woman who dared to threaten his family. He looked around and mocked them for cleaning up the place after his boys trashed it. His lackeys stood right behind him, laughing like complete idiots at the destruction they had caused. The lead thug starts mocking the boss for his looks, calling him a skinny, pretty boy and assuming he's just some pushover. He has no idea he's about to regret every word he just said. The boss didn't even flinch, staring the thug down with a cold and very dangerous intensity. Takaco stepped forward and told Akimoto to stop dragging a child into their messy adult business. But the scumbag just smirked, clearly having no intention of letting the kid leave the room. He swings a baseball bat right at her head while screaming about how she dared to threaten his wife earlier. He is absolutely livid that a common woman like her would ever lay a finger on his family. His eyes were full of malice as he glared at them, enjoying the fear he caused. He slams the bat down with all his might, shattering a wooden table into splinters to show exactly what he is capable of. He wants to make sure everyone in the room is paralyzed with fear. Just then, a small white object went flying through the air at a very high speed. It turned out Harudo was the one who threw it, his little face red with rage. The ball bounced across the floor as everyone froze in surprise at the kid's bold move. The lead thug completely loses it and starts screaming death threats at the little boy for hitting him. He immediately orders his goons to charge in and beat everyone in the room to a pulp. These thugs really think they can just waltz in and start making demands, completely unaware of the monster they are about to wake up. The first goon swings his bat at our boy, calling him a pretty boy, and assuming he will be an easy target to take down. Our boy effortlessly catches the heavy bat with one hand and delivers a powerful punch that knocks the wind right out of the guy. He follows up with a swift kick to the gut, sending the trash flying backward across the room. Another idiot tries to take advantage of the chaos and attack our girl from behind while she is trying to protect her son. She does not even need to look back as she delivers a brutal kick right where it hurts, proving she is more than capable of defending herself. The thug collapses in total agony, realizing too late that he picked a fight with the wrong mama bear. The leader is absolutely furious that his men were taken down so easily, while our girl frantically searches the area for anything she can use as a weapon. She grinds her teeth in frustration, realizing there is nothing nearby to help her protect her son from the remaining creeps. She stands her ground and keeps the kid behind her, ready to fight with her bare hands to keep him safe from these monsters. The purple-haired scumbag mocks her and smashes a chair to pieces, threatening to break her son's arms just to get under her skin. Suddenly, the front door is kicked open with a thunderous bang as a new group of people invades the apartment. A squad of men in sharp suits rushes in, and the leader immediately orders them to seize every single one of the thugs. The lead bodyguard bows low and apologizes for being late, while his men quickly pin the criminals to the floor. Our boy calmly adjusts his sleeve and orders his men to call the police, looking like he had everything under control from the start. He turns to see if she is okay, but she brushes him off and stays focused on her son, who is still shaking from the encounter. She immediately kneels down to make sure her son was not hurt during the scuffle. Proving her child's safety is the only thing on her mind. She gives him a look of pure confusion, wondering why he is suddenly acting like a white knight after everything they have been through. He touches his chin thoughtfully, thinking to himself that he actually handled that entire situation pretty impressively. He's clearly enjoying the fact that he got to swoop in and save the day. He touches his chin and thinks to himself that he actually handled that entrance quite impressively. She crosses her arms and worries that handing this creep over to the cops will only keep him off the streets for a few days. He gives her a confident smirk and tells her not to worry, clearly having a plan to ensure the thug stays locked up for a long time. She tells Harudo it is time to go back to his room, but the little guy is way too curious about what is going to happen next. The kid looks up with sparkly eyes, suddenly deciding that his parents are the coolest heroes he has ever seen. She points firmly toward the hallway and tells him to get moving, not wanting him to witness the messy part of the interrogation. The kid scurries off, actually looking quite happy despite the fact that his house was just invaded by a group of armed criminals. Kids really are something else, aren't they? He peeks one last time from behind the door before finally closing it, leaving the adults to handle the messy part of the business. Now the real interrogation can begin. Our girl lets out a massive sigh of relief, finally letting some of the stress leave her body now that her son is safe and sound. She looks exhausted, but relieved that the immediate danger has passed. Our boy walks over and takes a bat from one of his men, his expression turning cold and dangerous again. He is not done with the leader of these thugs just yet. He looms over the purple-haired leader, who is now tied up and helpless on the floor. He asks him very quietly if he was really serious about breaking his son's arms earlier. Our girl watches him from the side, thinking that as expected of a male lead, he really doesn't hold back when someone threatens his family. She can see the raw power he radiates when he is angry. Our girl watches him handle the situation with the cold precision of a true male lead. He notices she has a bit of a mess on her face and suggests she should wipe it off before they continue. He offers her a cloth to clean herself up, his gaze carrying an intensity that makes her feel a little flustered. The bodyguards watch from a distance, amazed at how calm these two are acting after such a violent confrontation. The lead thug starts screaming again, his face a total mess of bruises and blood. He is clearly terrified now that the tables have turned, and he's the one at the mercy of someone much more dangerous. He starts shouting that his big brother is going to come and kill every single person in the room. It's the classic bad guy line when they have absolutely no other cards left to play. Our girl suddenly bursts out laughing, unable to contain herself at how ridiculous the situation has become. She finds it hilarious that real-life bad guys sound exactly like the ones in cheap movies. She cannot stop laughing at how predictable this guy is, completely shattering the tense atmosphere of the interrogation. Our boy leans in and mocks the thug's empty threats, asking who exactly this big brother is supposed to be. He sits back comfortably and dares the guy to actually try and scare him, showing he does not fear whatever backup the thug thinks is coming. She starts cracking up at his annoyed face, finding his sudden grumpy attitude way too funny to take seriously. He stares them down with a bloody, creepy grin, trying his best to look like a threat even after getting his face bashed in. This delusional captive starts laughing hysterically on the floor and asks if they are finally starting to feel scared of him. Our guy recalls that Nageoka Hisashi just won a massive bid for a new amusement park project. He starts connecting the dots between the construction giant and the current mess they are in. He stares down at the mess on the floor with total indifference while the story continues to unfold. This guy has seen enough thugs to know this one is just a bottom-tier lackey. Harudo's mother wonders if this legendary big brother is actually as impressive as the rumors suggest. She honestly doubts anyone could be more intimidating than the man sitting right in front of her. He lets out a chilling smirk, already knowing he holds all the cards in this little game. The tied-up thug continues to bark, threatening that they will regret ever touching him once his brother finds out. He looks down at the groveling loser with pure contempt, mocking the idea that anyone important would actually care about a bottom-tier lackey. He gives a dark, knowing smile that says he knows exactly what kind of game they are playing. The thug boasts about his lifelong loyalty, claiming that his bond with his brother has been unbreakable since they were just teenagers. Mom finally hits her limit with the constant shouting, and realizes this idiot is never going to shut up on his own. She suddenly delivers a brutal kick to his mouth, ending his bragging session in the most painful way possible. Harudo's mom just sighs, completely fed up with how much this guy loves the sound of his own voice. He decides he is done playing games and orders his man to bring the legendary big brother here right now. The bodyguard moves in without a word, snatching the phone right out of the thug's pocket before he can even react. The thug desperately tries to scream for help into the phone, but the bodyguard immediately shuts him down and tells him to start talking. He remains completely unfazed by the chaos, signaling his team to handle the situation while he stays in control. Mom catches his eye and jokes about his twisted sense of humor, seeing how much he is enjoying the situation. Since it is going to take some time for the brother to arrive, she decides to go check on little Harudo in the next room. She reaches for the door handle, hoping her son did not have to witness any of the violence happening in the living room. To her surprise, the little guy comes rushing out of the room, nearly bumping into her as he tries to see what all the noise is about. He tries to act innocent by hiding behind her legs, but he has clearly been hovering near the door the whole time. He flashes her a cheeky grin, hoping his cuteness will distract her from the fact that he was eavesdropping on the adults. She remains firm and tells him it is way past his bedtime, ordering him to head back to his room immediately. The kid tries to defend himself, swearing on his life that he was not peeking through the keyhole. He finally pouts and admits that even though he tried his best to listen in, he could not make out a single word they were saying. Mom gives him a gentle pat on the head, explaining that they only want to protect him from things no child should have to see. Harudo stares up at her with wide eyes, trying to process everything his mother is telling him. He gives her one last protest before finally agreeing to be a good boy and head back to bed. Moments later, heavy footsteps echo through the hallway as the highly anticipated guest finally makes his entrance. He remains perfectly still on the sofa, radiating an aura of absolute authority as he waits for the confrontation to begin. He wastes no time and orders his men to bring the visitor in so they can settle this once and for all. Back in the bedroom, she settles Harudo down with his favorite videos to keep him occupied while she deals with the mess outside. She gives his head a loving pat, making sure he is completely distracted by the screen before she heads back out into the living room. Walking back in, she gets her first look at Nagiaka Hisashi and notes that he looks surprisingly refined for someone related to such a loudmouth. He immediately checks to see where the kid is, and she assures him that Harudo is safely in his room and out of earshot. Hisashi stares them down, secretly wondering who these two are and how they managed to get the upper hand on his brother. She notices his intense gaze and points out to the boss that their guest is currently staring a hole through them. He looks Hisashi right in the eye and asks him what he thinks about the absolute mess his family has created. The pathetic thug starts whining to his brother immediately, lying through his teeth and claiming that Harudo's family were the ones who started the fight. He responds with a chilling look that tells the visitor he is not buying a single word of that ridiculous sob story. He lays out the cold, hard facts, explaining how Akimoto trashed their home while arrogantly using the president's name as a shield. She reminds him that as Harudo's mother, she knows exactly how to handle people who threaten her family. Our boy watches the exchange and notes that Nagiaka seems used to giving orders with no questions asked. He flat out calls Nagiaka a liar, saying he is the type of person who can lie without batting an eye. Nagiaka doesn't even try to deny the accusation, telling the guy he is free to think whatever he wants. Our hero claims he finally understands what is going on, which only leaves Nagiaka feeling more confused. Even the woman is left in the dark, asking him what the hell he is even talking about. The thug remains pinned under a boot, screaming about how they are the ones who destroyed his family. Our boy asks if he was just supposed to stand there like an idiot and let some random thug beat him up. Nagiaka acts like his brother is the victim, claiming he only saw the poor guy getting kicked and never saw him hurt anyone. The woman looks on in disbelief as the purple-haired loser tries to act like the victim in front of his big brother. Someone finally shuts the thug up by stuffing a cloth in his mouth before he can spit out any more lies. The male lead leans back with total confidence, while that loud-mouthed thug finally gets a gag stuffed in his mouth to shut him up. He just watches the chaos unfold with a bored expression, as if this happens every single day. The purple-haired thug is absolutely losing it, screaming about how they have a death wish for talking to his brother that way. He tries to act like a big shot, but he is really just a pathetic mess after getting thrashed. Nageoka steps up and drops a chilling threat, warning them that a loose tongue can get a whole family buried. He is trying to play the big brother protector, but he just comes off as a total villain. Our girl is absolutely stunned by the audacity of this man threatening her entire family. She realizes Nageoka thinks he is completely above the law and can get away with anything. The male lead does not even flinch and tells the guy straight up that he is not fit to lead any projects. He basically calls him untrustworthy to his face, and man, the disrespect is just top tier. Nageoka is completely stunned into silence, unable to find a comeback for that brutal insult. The thug is left trembling in fear, realizing he just picked a fight with someone way out of his league. Our girl is just sitting back, thinking about how this is the most classic drama development she has ever seen. Instead of backing down, the thug flashes a creepy smile, as if he is actually enjoying the fact that he is bleeding and beaten. Nageoka starts to hesitate as he stares at the guy, feeling like he has definitely seen this face at some high-end event before. He realizes that if this guy is who he thinks he is, then picking a fight right now would be a total suicide mission. He finally tells his brother to just be quiet and stop making such a scene. The thug looks up at his brother in total betrayal, wondering why he is not being defended. Nageoka is clearly stressed out now, the confidence from earlier completely evaporating into thin air. Our girl cannot help but smirk, seeing the two brothers starting to turn on each other already. Nageoka tries to play it off with a fake smile, saying his brother is just a bit hot-headed and went out of line. The male lead just waves his hand casually and tells them to let the idiot go. As soon as the ropes are loose, the thug starts whining to his brother again about how they need to get revenge. One of the guards does not even wait for orders and just shuts the kid up with a quick shove to the ground. Nageoka is absolutely fuming now, his pride taking a massive hit in front of everyone. He tries to regain some dignity by introducing himself as Nageoka Hisashi from NEO Construction and asks for the male lead's name. The male lead does not even look at the business card, just letting it sit there like it is a piece of trash. He gives Nageoka a look that says he is not even worth the effort of a conversation. Our girl thinks to herself that this guy has the most arrogant and overbearing attitude she has ever seen. Nageoka is reaching his breaking point, wondering how this guy can be so civilly disrespectful. He asks how they are going to settle what happened today, but our girl jumps in and says there is plenty of blame to go around. Nageoka looks over at his pathetic brother, probably wishing he had just stayed home today. The thug is still shaking on the floor, realizing the situation has moved way past his level. Nageoka finally offers a half-hearted apology, but you can tell it is killing him to say the words. Our girl is not having any of it and tells him flat out that they won't be accepting any fake apologies today. She stares him down with a look that says she is not even slightly intimidated by his family name. Nageoka tries to flex his power by having his wall of suited bodyguards stand behind him to look intimidating. But the male lead just gives off this terrifyingly calm aura that makes all those tough guys look like children in comparison. Our girl notices that the men Nageoka brought along look like the type who would kill someone without a second thought. She leans in close to the male lead and whispers that she is counting on him to protect her, since she does not want to get beaten up. The male lead looks at her like she is crazy for being so playful in such a dangerous situation. He suddenly points out to Nageoka that his phone has been ringing this whole time. Our girl catches on that something big is about to go down. She watches closely as the tension in the room shifts toward that persistent ringing phone. Nageoka feels the vibration in his pocket and looks genuinely annoyed at the interruption. He slowly reaches down to pull his phone out, trying to keep his cool. Nageoka tries to play it cool, but he has no idea he is walking straight into a trap. The male lead goads him into answering, knowing exactly what kind of disaster is waiting on the other end. The male lead encourages him to answer it, suggesting that it might actually be some good news for once. Our girl is ready to turn the tables and can't wait to see the look on his face when she finally strikes back. Nageoka just stares at the phone in silence while it keeps buzzing in his hand. The phone is practically jumping out of his hand with how much it is vibrating. Nageoka finally picks up the call, having no idea that the voice on the other end is about to deliver the worst news of his life. His face instantly goes pale as he listens to the person on the other end of the line. He starts shouting about how the deal was supposed to be done and that the higher-ups had already signed everything. Our girl starts poking the male lead in the side, clearly having the time of her life watching Nageoka fall apart. She gets a front-row seat to the villain's ultimate downfall as the male lead leans in to see if she's satisfied with the performance. Asahi tries to play it cool, asking if this was all just some elaborate scheme for her to get closer to him. Our girl just scoffs and tells him he really needs to stop flattering himself because he is not that special. Nageoka looks like his soul just left his body after hearing the devastating news on that call. Seeing how happy her son is makes her realize he has been well cared for during her absence. But man, it still burns her up that this guy keeps trying to push her completely out of the picture. Asahi just sits there in icy silence, probably processing how much of a pathetic mess this villain has become. The assistant looks over, totally confused by the incredibly awkward and heavy vibe filling the entire room. He tries to play it off as a joke, but one look at Asahi's face says he's not in a laughing mood. Asahi thinks that leaving a child's future in the hands of someone like her would be an absolute disaster. The assistant thinks to himself that Asahi is acting like some world-class parenting expert all of a sudden. Nageoka is shaking like a leaf, clutching his stomach like he's actually about to be physically sick from the stress. Nageoka starts physically spiraling as the gravity of his massive mistake finally sets in. The villain finally snaps and stands up, demanding answers while struggling to hide his sheer panic. The villain is literally on the verge of tears as his whole world crumbles around him in seconds. He demands to know if Asahi is the one who sabotaged the massive joint project with the Kirya group. The other guy in the room is just floored, sitting on the floor in a state of total shock. He can't believe a green kid like Asahi could actually influence a giant company like the Kirya group. While Asahi is lost in thought, our girl just relaxes on the sofa and gives him a little nudge to get his head back in the game. They finally have a moment to breathe now that they have the upper hand against the corporation. She jokes about him having a totally forgettable face, since his enemies can't even recognize him as the Kirya heir. She points out that all the facts are right there, yet nobody can link him to the real Kirya Asahi. The two guys are just stuck in a state of permanent confusion at this point after her bombshell comment. Asahi turns his focus back to the business at hand, looking totally serious and ready to finish this guy. Our girl asks him if he's doing this on purpose just to mess with their heads and make them suffer. He agrees that it's time to stop wasting any more time and finally wrap this whole drama up. He looks over at Nageoka, who is sweating buckets and looking more pathetic with every passing second. Our girl remarks that the temperature in here just plummeted because NEO construction is officially dead in the water. Asahi checks his phone, noting that someone leaked the sensitive info way before the official announcement was scheduled. Nageoka's phone starts blowing up with a call, and he looks like he's holding a live grenade. Our girl asks if he's even going to answer that, knowing it is just more bad news coming his way. Nageoka is absolutely fuming, blaming this entire downfall and his ruined career on our girl alone. He finally answers the call, getting absolutely screamed at by Director Kyoto on the other end of the line. Our girl watches him crumble, thinking about how he's definitely going to try and make her life hell later. She admits to Asahi that she is genuinely scared because these people clearly think they are above the law. Asahi shoots back with a cold glare, accusing her of using their son to threaten him for her own gain. She just sighs and shakes her head, explaining she isn't threatening anyone, she's just stating the facts. She reminds him that Harudo is her son too, and wanting peace for your child is just basic parenting. Asahi gives a smug little smirk, telling her she sure is talented when it comes to using her words. She catches on to his tone immediately, asking if he's implying that she is the root of the problem. She asks him if he ever considered that Harudo might actually end up hating him for his whole life. Asahi doubles down on his arrogance, saying the boy is still better off with him than a scheming mother. That was the final straw for her. She tells him that leaving the kid with him is officially not happening. She stands her ground and declares she needs to rethink if he is even fit to be around his son. She tells him to hurry up and wrap this business up because they have a dog to buy later. She slams the door shut behind her, leaving all those guys in a cloud of dust and silence. She walks into the other room, where little Harudo is waiting for her to come get him. She gives her boy a sweet little head pat to calm him down and show him everything is fine. Harudo looks up and asks if that guy is finally done with his business, so they can finally leave. Harudo stands his ground and explains that he refuses to call someone Papa if they are always trying to keep him and his mother apart. She stays quiet as she realizes just how much her son has actually been hurt by his father's cold behavior. Harudo just looks down sadly, clearly torn about the whole situation between his mother and his father. The representative from NEO Construction starts bowing his head off, trying to apologize to President Kirya for the huge mess that happened today. Kirya remains cold while the guy sweats buckets, but in the back, purple-haired Akimoto is fuming and plotting his revenge for this humiliation. Takaco is finally taking a breather, trying to process the absolute chaos that just unfolded in her living room. She looks over at Kirya and thanks him for stepping in to help with the situation today. Kirya tells her there is no need for thanks, since this was all about protecting Harudo from those jerks. He remains deeply irritated by the fact that those intruders dared to set foot in her home and cause such a scene. Then he drops this bomb, telling her that next time she needs help she should just come to him directly instead of using the kid. Takaco is stunned by his audacity, wondering if he really thinks she did all this on purpose to get his attention. She scoffs and tells him not to flatter himself, because she definitely was not using their son as some kind of bait. She is so annoyed that she is practically vibrating, thinking this guy really believes he is the center of the universe. Takaco calls him an absolute idiot and promises to bring their son out right now so he can face the music for what he did. Kirya looks at the guy and asks what the heck he means by calling Takaco his wife. The boss is totally confused, wondering if the kid is illegitimate since they are not actually married like he assumed. The guy keeps rambling about making a kimono, and his family come back to apologize properly for all the damage they caused. He holds out a credit card, begging Kirya to take it to cover the cost of all the broken furniture and appliances. Kirya just gestures to his bodyguard to take the card since he is way too important to touch it himself. The boss finally gets the hint and starts heading for the door with his tail between his legs to get out of there. The boss grabs Akimoto by the collar and screams at the idiot to stop spacing out and apologize immediately before things get even worse. He literally shoves Akimoto to the floor, forcing him to show some respect to the people he offended. Akimoto is coughing and sputtering on the ground, looking like he finally realizes he messed with the wrong people today. Kirya tells them to hold on because Takaco needs to hear this pathetic apology too before they are allowed to leave. The bodyguard lowers his head, acknowledging the command from his boss to fetch the lady of the house. He knocks on the bedroom door and tells Takaco that the president wants her to join them for the final apology. Takaco is just confused, wondering what else could possibly happen after all the drama that already went down. She opens the door and sees the absolute mess of a man on the floor, while the boss praises Kirya for being a boss. Takaco thinks to herself that in a normal world this would be a legal mediation, but here it is just raw power play. She tells the bodyguard she is coming, trying to keep her cool while her living room is being used for a groveling session. She walks into the living room and finds Akimoto on his knees, while the boss practically begs her to listen to the man's pathetic apology. The boss kicks Akimoto to get him talking, and the man finally breaks down and chokes out a sincere apology for everything he did today. The boss is still playing nice, asking Takaco if she can find it in her heart to forgive this absolute loser. Takaco and Kirya sit on the couch like royalty, looking down at the two guys as they wait for their next move. Akimoto tries to play the family card by promising to return with his wife and son for a proper apology. He is shaking in his boots as he begs for one more chance to fix his massive mistake. Takaco shuts down the idea of a family visit immediately, making it clear she only wants them to pay for every single thing they broke. She adds one more condition with a little smirk on her face, making sure she gets the last laugh here. She decides to have some fun and demands he apologize to every neighbor in the building to make up for the massive disturbance he caused. Kiria is actually impressed, thinking she is pretty skillful at using his status to get exactly what she wants from these guys. The boss quickly ushers Ekimoto out, probably terrified that Kiria will change his mind and destroy their company for good. The construction rep shoots one last frustrated look over his shoulder, clearly hating that he had to get involved in this family mess. He tries to get Kiria to reconsider their business deal, insisting that NEO Construction is still a solid company despite this disaster. He continues to beg for mercy, hoping that his company's track record is enough to keep their business deal from falling apart completely. Kiria tells the boss to get lost and says they will finish their conversation at another time. After getting completely shut down, the boss gives a pathetic bow and makes a break for the exit. He ditches the apartment at full speed, leaving Takaco and Kiria alone to finally enjoy their victory. Once they get outside, the boss leads the way through the alley as Ekimoto and his men follow behind in silence. Suddenly, the boss whips around and clocks Ekimoto right in the face with a punch that sends his head spinning. Ekimoto staggers back and is barely held up by his own men while he tries to process the brutal hit he just took. The boss grabs him by the collar and screams that the kid he insulted is actually the heir to the Kiria group. He warns Ekimoto that if he ever uses the company name to cause this kind of trouble again, he will kill him. The boss storms off into the night and leaves Ekimoto standing in the shadows to realize he just lost everything. Tsukishima had heard quite enough and made her exit from that mess without looking back. She stopped in her tracks and shouted back at those guys to just wait a damn minute. She gives them a piece of her mind and makes it clear she would never use her child as a tool before turning to check on the stranger she bumped into. This random guy with curly hair just stared her down with an incredibly intense look. Even though she doesn't look wealthy, the fact that her son is casually mentioning 10 million yen catches everyone completely off guard. Tsukishima didn't care about his staring and offered to call an ambulance right then and there. The guy just smirked like he found the whole situation hilarious or was planning something sketchy. He casually laid back on the pavement and told her he was fine as long as she covered his medical bills. One of the bodyguards tried to play peacemaker and apologized to MS Tsukishima on behalf of the president. She wasn't having any of it and slammed the door shut to put some distance between her and that drama. Once she's safely inside, she lets out a heavy sigh but quickly fixes her expression so she doesn't worry little Harudo. She gently patted his head and told him everything was going to be just fine. Harudo looked up with total innocence and asked what it actually meant to use a child as a tool. That question set her off internally, and she started fuming about what that bastard president had dared to suggest. She managed to keep her cool for the kid's sake and told him he should ask his papa that himself. Her anger starts leaking through her smile, and she ends up scaring the poor kid with her terrifying expression. She realized she was letting her anger show and let out a little chuckle to ease the tension. She decided to change the subject and asked why he had even come to find her today. Harudo started explaining the whole story of his day as they sat down together on the bed. Our girl listened intently, giving him her full attention while he spilled the beans about everything. After hearing her son's story, she takes a moment to walk around and process how everything got so complicated. She realizes the president completely misunderstood the situation, but decides she doesn't care what a jerk like him thinks of her. She felt a brief moment of peace thinking she was finally done with all that nonsense for the night. But then the anger rushed back and she started pummeling a pillow, screaming about how much she hated that bastard. After her little outburst, she took a long, deep breath to calm her racing heart and regain her composure. She pulled out her phone to distract herself from the rage and find something productive to do. She saw an ad for a fashion design competition and realized her days of studying trends were about to pay off. She finished the entry and felt a huge weight lift off her shoulders when the confirmation popped up on screen. Feeling much better, she stood up and suggested they head out to grab some delicious yakitori for dinner. Harudo was absolutely hyped for the idea and started bragging about how many skewers he could finish by himself. She laughed at his enthusiasm and teased him about whether he could actually handle 20 whole skewers of meat. They headed out into the glowing neon lights of the city to find a good spot to eat and relax. The smell of grilled chicken filled the air as the chef started seasoning the skewers over the hot coals. They found a nice table outside and sat down to enjoy their night out together as a family. Harudo suddenly pulls out a gold credit card and explains that the man gave him 10 million yen with a pin set to his own birthday. The kid held it out like it was just a normal piece of plastic and not a total fortune. He looked at her with pure innocence and said they could finally use it to buy a house just for them. She gave him a sweet smile and promised that they would definitely buy a house together sooner or later. But for now, she told him there were no buts, and he needed to put that expensive card away properly. Harudo pouted a little bit, but agreed to listen to his mama and tucked the card back into his pocket. The kid was feeling a bit grumpy and started leaning back in his chair while they waited for the food. Suddenly, the chair started to tip over, and he realized he was about to eat the pavement big time. She immediately pulls her son close to check him over and make sure he didn't get any nasty scrapes from the fall. Before they can even catch their breath, a passerby ends up tripping right over the fallen chair. She feels terrible about the accident and rushes over to apologize to the man for the mess. As she reaches out to help him up, the guy completely loses his cool and snaps at her to stay away from him. Harudo isn't about to let a stranger disrespect his mom and calls the guy out for his terrible attitude. The atmosphere turns incredibly sour as they both stand there stunned by the man's aggressive behavior. The guy just lies there like he owns the place and asks her how much money she wants to make this go away. She is completely floored by how bold this guy is being right now. The creep even has the nerve to call her a pretty lady, while her son Harudo cowers behind her. Back at the station, the officer can't believe she was at the center of such a massive scene. She is disgusted that those losers tried to extort $5 million from her for medical bills. It turns out those punks were running their mouths about having powerful backup to protect them from trouble. The officer is actually impressed that she had the presence of mind to record the whole encounter on her phone. He tells her she made a smart move and asks her to sign the paperwork to finish the report. Rewinding to earlier that night, the gang of punks cornered her in the street to shake her down. They claim they have all the proof they need to hold her responsible for their friend's injury. She doesn't back down for a second and asks if that 5 million is for their own funeral costs instead. The guy is absolutely livid after being talked down to like that by a single mother. Realizing they were being targeted from the jump, she decides to call the police before things get ugly. As soon as the guy sees her pull out the phone, he tries to lunge forward and snatch it away. He screams for his buddies to help him grab her before the call actually connects. But in the middle of the rush, one of the punks accidentally crashes into a table of very tough-looking men. Food and skewers go flying everywhere, soaking the clothes of the guys who were just trying to eat in peace. The leader of the group stares down at his ruined white shirt as his temper hits the breaking point. He grabs the punk by the collar and threatens to teach him a lesson he will never forget. With one swift motion, he slams the guy onto the pavement like a piece of trash. That was the final straw that sent the rest of the gang charging into a full-blown street war. The scene quickly turns into a massive dust cloud of flying fists and cartoonish violence. Harudo watches the carnage from behind a wall and excitedly tells his mom that the fighting has finally started. She looks at her son with concern and wonders if he is actually finding this brutal display entertaining. It reminds her of how Harudo's father used to solve every single problem in his life with his fists. She snaps out of it and tells him that violence is never the answer, and he should not pick up bad habits. She is doing her best to be a good parent and keep his innocent mind far away from street brawls. Harudo goes quiet for a second as he processes exactly what his mom is telling him. He realizes that if he ever runs into someone he cannot beat, the police are just one call away. A light bulb practically appears over his head as he discovers this new ultimate life hack for safety. His mother just stares back with a blank look, totally baffled by the weird logic her son just came up with. She explains that those guys only targeted them because he was flaunting his bank card and talking about money. The poor kid realizes he is the reason for the mess and gives his mom a tiny apology. She reminds him that being the son of the Kiria Group president means he will always have a target on his back. The gravity of his situation finally sets in, and he looks absolutely terrified at the thought of it. He starts imagining masked men snatching him up in the middle of the street for ransom. He can almost hear them laughing about how perfect of a target he is for a kidnapping. He breaks down and cries out that he definitely does not want to be kidnapped by anyone. She reassures him that he will be fine as long as he stays low-key, and reminds him that his father would never let anything happen to him. Harudo nods along, still looking pretty traumatized by the harsh reality check he just received. A police car suddenly pulls up to the scene, catching the mother and her son by surprise. The officers hop out of their vehicle and immediately order everyone to freeze right where they are. They find the street brawlers caught red-handed, including one guy who was just about to smash a chair over his opponent's head. The police quickly move in to break up the fight and force the troublemakers into custody. The mother approaches the officers and identifies herself as the person who called in the report. One of the officers stops and stares at her, realizing that she looks incredibly familiar. He points out that she is the same person who called the police during another incident in town not too long ago. She gives a nervous laugh and tries to play it cool by complimenting the officer on his sharp memory. The officer informs her that they still need her to come down to the station to provide an official statement on what happened. Our girl sits on the cold station bench with Harudo, just waiting for the next headache to arrive. She looks up as a man stops right in front of her, feeling like her day is about to get a whole lot worse. She looks up and realizes she is not getting out of this conversation easily. Kiria looms over her with a cold expression, ordering his assistant to bring them back home since her trashed apartment is no place for a child. While Kiria waits in the car, the assistant looks back to make sure everything is handled properly. The assistant chases after her before she can disappear, calling out for her to wait up. He tries to convince her that staying in that wreck of a room is impossible and begs her to come back to the house. She just glares back and tells him to inform his boss that he doesn't need to worry about their lives. The assistant warns her that there is no guarantee that scumbag Ikimoto won't try to pull another stunt against them. She starts overthinking the assistant's warning because she knows that scumbag Ikimoto is always up to no good. It takes everything in her to stay calm while she calculates her next move against him. Finally, she gives in and agrees to go sign the paperwork first before making any big moves. Back inside the station, Kiria looks as intense as ever while he waits for the formalities to finish. Our girl sits back down with her son, feeling the weight of Kiria's gaze from across the room. She tries to play it cool by saying it is such a wild coincidence to meet him here of all places. Kiria smirks and hits her with the sarcasm, saying it is a huge coincidence that he ended up bailing her out. Our girl is not having any of Kiria's sarcastic comments about coming to her rescue. She stares him down while keeping Harudo close, making it clear she is not impressed by his sudden hero act. Kiria simply lets out a smug little sound to show just how little her attitude affects him. He clearly finds her frustration entertaining and does not plan on making things easy for her. He reaches out and hands over her bag, finally giving her back some of her dignity. She immediately starts defending herself, explaining that those guys were the ones who picked a fight with her first. Kiria leans in close and tells her she is either a total trouble magnet or just a straight-up troublemaker. Her anger finally hits the ceiling when he dares to call her a walking disaster to her face. She looks like she is about to explode from all the disrespect he has been throwing her way. She loses it and plants a massive headbutt right on Kiria's forehead with a loud thud. The impact is so hard that Kiria actually stumbles back from the sheer force of it. His bodyguards have to rush in to catch him, while he groans in pain from the surprise attack. Even Harudo is stunned into silence watching his mom go full warrior mode in the middle of the station. She clutches her own head in pain, yelling at him for standing so close in the first place. She rants about how crazy the Kiria family is, and claims her son is the only normal one among them. Kiria just rubs his sore jaw and tells her he will gladly take that as a compliment. She looks at him like he has totally lost his mind for being so casual about it. The assistant interrupts the chaos to announce that all the legal procedures are finally finished. Kiria goes back to his serious boss mode, ready to get out of this place. The staff invites Harudo to head to the car, and the little guy looks back at his mom for approval. She puts on a brave face and tells her son to go ahead, promising she will follow with his dad shortly. Harudo waves goodbye while the assistant leads him out of the station. Once they are alone, she turns to Kiria and tells him to say whatever is on his mind clearly. He just stares at her, looking like he is reconsidering every life choice that led him here. She brings up how he mocked her earlier about bad security and being a regular at the police station. She crosses her arms, refusing to let him look down on her anymore. Our girl points a finger right at his chest and tells him his company has no future with a president who doesn't check facts. She gets right in his personal space and asks him if he really thinks she would use her precious son as a tool. Kiria stays quiet for once, actually listening to her emotional outburst. He looks away, looking a bit frustrated that she is making so much sense. But as she tries to walk away, he reaches out and grabs her wrist firmly. Kiria tells her he will look into the situation again, but he still won't admit that he believes her story just yet. She snaps her arm back, telling him off for being such a stubborn bastard. She walks away with a huff, leaving him standing there in the middle of the room. Kiria just stands there and sighs, clearly drained from the back-and-forth argument. She makes her way out to the parking lot and heads straight for the waiting SUV. They eventually arrive back at her neighborhood, finally putting all that police drama behind them. She opens the car door for Harudo and tells him it is finally time for them to head inside. The kid looks confused and asks why they are going back to their place, since it is a total wreck. She tells him it is fine, and they will just sneak in through the back to avoid any more trouble. She's making the tough call and telling Harudo that tonight he's going to stay with his dad. The assistant is surprised she isn't joining them since she clearly has nowhere else to go. Our girl plays it off like she just prefers her own space and doesn't want to mess up Kiria's fancy place. This assistant knows Kiria's attitude is going to land him in hot water one of these days. Since her front door is still a total wreck, she tells them she will just find a hotel for the night. Little Harudo isn't having it and grabs onto her clothes like his life depends on it. She tries to explain that staying with Papa is much safer until the apartment gets fixed up. The kid is crying his eyes out, refusing to let go because he wants to stay with his mom. Even the assistant tries to step in and tell him that this isn't a permanent goodbye. She looks at the assistant with total suspicion as he tries his best to mediate the situation. Eventually, she takes the kid's hand and starts walking away, leaving the assistant standing there alone. He lets out a long sigh, probably thinking about how messy this whole family dynamic has become. Suddenly, he gets a massive chill down his spine like someone is burning a hole in his back. He turns around and finds Kiria standing right there, looking like he has some serious questions. The poor guy starts sweating bullets, wondering exactly how much of that conversation his boss heard. Kiria just stares him down with that cold, judgmental look that makes everyone want to run. He tries to stutter out an excuse, but Kiria threatens to snap his neck if he says another word. Once Kiria walks past, he wipes his brow, thankful he still has his head on his shoulders. Kiria demands a full report on everything that happened and makes it clear he wants to know every single detail. The assistant nervously peeks at his boss, wondering if he's about to lose his job for being too involved. Kiria maintains his cold exterior by claiming he'd rather avoid her anyway, but his actions say something else entirely. After returning to the mansion, the assistant finds himself walking through the massive halls with a heavy heart. Out of nowhere, the boss issues a strange command for him to stay away from his own friend. Kiria explains that he doesn't want the assistant catching whatever stupidity Harudo is spreading around. The assistant is stunned by the petty insult, but realizes it's better to just nod and agree. He heads back out through the mansion, feeling completely bullied for no apparent reason. He pulls out his phone to vent some of his frustration after dealing with his arrogant boss all night. He takes Kiria's advice literally and sends a text telling Harudo they should stop hanging out for a while. He waits for a response, likely enjoying the chaotic reaction he's about to get from his friend. A mischievous smile spreads across his face as his phone starts blowing up with angry messages. He looks at his screen with pure satisfaction, realizing that making people angry is actually the highlight of his day. The morning sun finally begins to rise over the city after a long and exhausting night. Back at the hotel, our girl is still buried under her blankets and trying to sleep off all the drama. She is suddenly jolted awake by an aggressive banging on the door at a ridiculous hour. Harudo is already up in his adorable bear onesie, but she tells him to stay back while she handles the door. She quickly throws on her robe and heads out of the bedroom to see who is causing such a racket. When she asks who it is, she's surprised to hear a very familiar voice responding from the other side. She reaches for the handle and prepares to open the door, not knowing what kind of trouble is waiting for her. Her jaw drops when she sees the boss standing right in front of her room. Kiria stands there as cold as ever, while his assistant is loaded down with a mountain of luxury shopping bags. The assistant buckles in as they get ready to head out and start their investigation. Kiria orders him to dig up every single police report she's ever been involved in to see the full story. They gather all the records and sit down to piece together the truth behind her past. He scans through the paperwork with a cold gaze, questioning if everything they found is actually true. The assistant confirms that every word in those documents is a verified fact from the station. Kiria has no patience for the stuttering and demands his assistant speak up and stop acting so timid. He realizes he needs to make a move and decides they will go shopping for supplies before heading to her place tomorrow.